Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Younts. This is all the parts together. Welcome to the DMF. I have Alan Katz, A.L. Katz, writer and producer for the successful HBO television series Tales from the Crypt. He also does podcasts How Not to Make a Movie, DNA Horror Story, and many others. Welcome to the DMF. Thanks for coming.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Justin.
Thank you. I appreciate this. All right. So first thing I got, where'd you grow up?
I grew up on the East Coast. I grew up outside of Baltimore, Maryland. I went to school. I went to Vassar. I was in high school. I was a drama-rama. At Vassar, I was a theater major, a drama major. And when I graduated out of Vassar, I thought I was going to be an actor. I've always been a writer. I've been a professional writer since I was 16. It was the first time I ever got paid for writing. And so I guess I always took writing for granted. It was something I could it came as naturally as breathing.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an actor when I went to Vassar. I also directed, but I went to one audition after Vassar. I was terrible. I was not well prepared. And I walked out of it and I thought, screw this. What kind of an actor was to make their living as an actor? I'm going to go be a writer instead, bigger. And I said to myself, I promised myself I would never act again until someone asked me nicely. And ironically, that's exactly what happened. The couple of times I've acted since then, a friend was directing an episode of America's Most Wanted, and he said, "Hey, would you be in this episode?" And I went, "Oh, okay, you asked nicely. Okay, I'll do it." And then when I was doing Tales from the Crypt, Mick Garris directed an episode, and for certain particular reasons, he felt the need to make it up to me, and so he asked me to be in the episode, to act in the episode, and he asked very nicely. And so I said yes. So I turned to writing, and I was doing little training films and public relations pieces. And a friend from high school named Carol Yumkus had become an agent at William Morris, a literary agent at William Morris in Los Angeles. And she said, knowing that I was writing and writing plays, I thought, New York's still going to be New York theater. She said, you should try writing a screenplay. So I wrote one. And she said, this is pretty good. You should come out and meet and greet people, see what LA's like. And so in June 1985, I flew out for a week to Los Angeles, and I was a burgeoning New York. To me, Los Angeles was the stupidest place on the planet, the land of the avocado head. But, June in New York, it's hot and it's humid, and in Manhattan, walking around everywhere smelled like piss back then. In Los Angeles, it's the desert. It's humid. There's no humidity. The weather's fantastic. And this is 40 years ago, a lot less traffic. People were so nice to me. The meetings, blowing copious amounts of smoke up my backside. One evening, Carol took me to a movie premiere, St. Elmo's Fire. William Morris represented it. And so my view of this was entirely backstage. And, it was intoxicating. At the party afterwards, I didn't have any meetings scheduled for the next morning. So someone said, you should take a drive through Topanga Canyon. And so the next morning, that's what I did. And if you don't know what Topanga Canyon is, it's within the Los Angeles city limits. 40 years ago, it was a lot more wild, a lot less developed. And it's beautiful. As I was driving from the 101, the freeway, through the Santa Monica Mountains, as they plunge into the ocean at PCH, right at the water at the Pacific Ocean, New York, screw New York. LA had completely seduced me. I was ready to whore myself out entirely.
That's what people say about LA when they come from New York. It's like, I hate it, and then I like it, because it's just different.
Shocking. But yeah, the following June, the next month, July, I moved out. And one of the people that I met that first week in Los Angeles, one of the producers who liked what I was doing, was a guy named Gil Adler. Now, though I made my living in horror mostly and sci-fi, I was not a horror guy. I'm not a horror guy to this day. I'm a comedy guy. I wrote comedy. What I wrote and sent to Carol was a comedy.
What were your comedy? What were your comedy guys like? Who did you? What shows did you like?
Well, I was a Marx Brother fan.
Okay.
So, I had written the first screenplay I wrote was a thing called Down to Earth. It was about a character like me that he was in college and he's gets on the air to a Howard Stern like disc jockey who has a guest who says that he has experienced aliens, and the college kid says, "Hey, I've met the same aliens, and this guy's absolutely right, except about this thing where he's wrong, and he needs to stop saying that." And he thinks it's what a great prank, and suddenly people are coming at this kid. Okay, what do you know? What do you know? Is this true what you just said? And the kid finds himself in a situation he never anticipated. That's the script I wrote, and that's what people started to respond to. One of them was this producer named Gil Adler. Now, Gil he had also not a horror guy, he was comedy. He had come out of the theater in New York, and he had trained as an accountant. So Gil understood that if you have $1 to spend making your TV show or movie, don't spend $1. You haven't got it. Now, if you can make your movie or TV show for 99 cents, 98 cents, still make it look like that $1, this is good. Better still, if you can do it for 97 or 96 cents, make it look like $1 or $2. Now you're on to something that you can, that's viable. The creative process is constant problem solving. And Gil's answer wasn't throw money at the problem, it was throw more creativity at the problem. Well, that's exactly my approach. And so Gil and I became not only best friends, but creative partners for a decade. Now, Gil was working mostly as a producer. He got hired by HBO to produce a show for them called The Hitchhiker, which he did up in Vancouver. And a couple of years later, they had a problematic production. HBO knew that Gil he was responsible with the budget and the schedule. They had a problem production at HBO, an expensive thing with some expensive people involved called Vietnam War Stories. And it was shooting in Savannah. It was over budget. Schedule was a mess. And they sent Gil in to take it over and try to set the boat right. And he fixed all the problems. In fact, it won a couple of awards. And a little while later, HBO had another big ticket, expensive production that needed a steady producerial hand. It was called Tales from the Crypt. Now, when HBO first got into the Tales from the Crypt business, into the creative business, in the early 90s, they were still mostly movies. As they began to dip their toe in, they had a show called Dream On, another one called First and 10 was a football show. It was a Dream On.
You mentioned The Hitchhiker. I remember the Hitchhiker. I know Dream. Like these shows aren't even on like HBO Max or anything. Like they're kind of like shows that like if you know about them, they exist. But they don't. They're
there was nothing special about them. They were small. They were First and 10 and Dream. First and 10 was First and 10 and Dream On were basically they were single camera shows with nudity and profanity. If you took out the nudity and profanity, these were basically network ready single camera shows. There was nothing extraordinary about them. But then you get these 4 Hollywood mega movie producers, Joel Silver, Richard Donner, Walter Hill, Bob Zemeckis, and they have this passion project, this comic book they collectively loved from their boyhoods, all the EC Comics horror titles, and all the EC titles, but the horror is one they wanted to start with. Tales from the Crypt is what they want to call it. And they approach HBO and they say, we want to take this boyhood passion project. We want to take our feature film vision and put it in your little TV box. HBO jumped up and down and said, yes, let's do it. And they went right into the writing process. They basically, in order to take a franchise, the franchise elements of the comic book you love, and translate them into a whole other medium. Well, it doesn't happen by magic. You have to make that happen. And if you're going to do it as a TV show, there's got to be somebody in charge of making sure that every script you write, all the stuff that is important in the franchise and the comic books, you got to get over into this new medium. They never hired anybody. There was never any development process. They just began writing scripts. The first 3 episodes of Tales from the Crypt, the initial order of 3, are brilliant because it's Dick Donner's Dig This Cat, He's Real Gone, Bob Z's All Through the House, and Walter's The Man Who Was Death. And these are 3 brilliant Tales from the Crypt episodes. They're 3 great episodes of television. Yeah. HBO ordered it back 3, which are not quite up.
What's really interesting about this time? This Tales from the Crypt comes out 1989. And you see at that time, you also have, Twin Peaks came out at that time. You had The Simpsons. It was kind of like you can kind of see a cultural shift that's happening.
They're also important at the time that the that Crypt started. Movies and feature films were 2 very different worlds. Now, these days, people can travel back and forth between them, but back then there was a massive divide. The occasional Tom Hanks or Robin Williams would go from movies into TV, but if you were going from TV into movies, that basically meant your career was done.
It was kind of like commercials. The commercials, if a big Hollywood actor did a commercial, they would do it in another country.
Yes.
No one would see it.
Yeah. So it was a very the feature world was where you wanted to be. That was where all the respect was. TV was workaday. Yeah. But Tales from the Crypt changed that because part of the lure was the feature film vision inside the little TV box. During the screening, the cast and crew screening of those first 3 episodes, after the first episode ran, 2 crew members in the second row, and one turned to the other and says, "That's great TV." The other says, "It's not TV, it's HBO." Yeah. And the 2 HBO execs in the row ahead turned and they looked back and realized not only have they just heard their new slogan, that's their culture. Yeah. And Tales from the Crypt changed HBO's culture. It did. And HBO, HBO was the first successful subscription model company. Up till that point, the whole business, how money flowed in and out, was based on trying to get to syndication because that's where profitability lay. And syndication, you had to get to 65 episodes because all right, so syndication, you're going to strip it 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. So that's an ad cycle is 13 weeks times that 5 days a week. 5 times 13 is 65. So in order to become profitable, a show had to have 65 episodes in the can. Now, because that was where profitability lay, shows that were created could not be open-ended. They had to be close-ended because people weren't necessarily going to watch them in sequence. So you couldn't do really too much chronological storytelling.
Yeah.
That's why shows were created the way that they were created. Then HBO happened, and HBO didn't care about 65. In fact, they didn't own anything. They didn't own anything on Tales from the Crypt. I don't know if they owned anything anywhere. Yeah.
They just owned the sandbox for where these things would be placed.
Yeah, basically. So with Tales from the Crypt, not only did they not develop, they didn't develop the show. They didn't find a deficit partner either. Now, the way that TV economics work, whenever the network, whatever network it is that runs it, every time they run it, they pay a license fee. Yeah. But the license fee that first time, 2, even 3 times, that's not going to pay for the cost of production. That's why you get a deficit partner who's going to cash flow and be the bank until you get to profitability. Then, of course, they're first in line, pay me off first, and they're first in line for profits, pay me off first. But all right, they're taking the financial risk of making the whole thing possible. Okay, I accept that. The Crypt partners never did that. And HBO, after the first 3 and then the second 3 of the first season, they ordered a second season of 18 episodes and a third season of 13 episodes. And that was going to be, in essence, the end of Tales from the Crypt.
Wait, so they wanted 18 episodes?
The second season is 18 episodes.
Really? Wow, I didn't even realize.
And then there was a third season. The third season, when I went aboard, is 13. But because there was no deficit partner and HBO was just cash flowing it, money was just getting spent. And the night before the season 2 wrap party, the executive producers were handed a financial statement by HBO, which said, guys, you're $1 million cash in the hole. If you want your season 3, and there was lots of money for the executive producers in season 3, get out your checkbooks, pay us back. The executive producers promptly canceled the wrap party. They fired everybody. And they got out their checkbooks and they paid HBO the $1 million because there was more, they would get that $1 million back out of the budget of the show, which is exactly what they did, and get their money, whatever fees they were going to get for season 3. So that's what was most important to
were Richard Donner, Walter Hill, and Joel Silver, were they all credited as like showrunners as the show?
No, they weren't showrunners. The first 2 seasons, the showrunner was a guy named Bill Tytler.
Okay.
And Bill Tytler was really, he ran the show, but it didn't run it quite as responsibly as he perhaps should have. HBO, looking at now a season 3 of Tales from the Crypt, supposed to be the last season, they wanted someone responsible, a responsible producer to oversee, since their cash flow. They wanted Gil.
Okay.
They knew Gil was a strong producer, a responsible producer, and since I was Gil's writing partner, we had done episodes of Gil had produced a show called Freddy's Nightmares, the Nightmare on Elm Street TV series. And
you wrote on that as well.
So we wrote a couple episodes, and Gil directed his first time there.
Another show you can't see anymore.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other story. That show. So I though I did not have the bona fides to run any show, because there was no one in that role previously, the partners hadn't even thought of it. When Gil said, well, I got to have Alan as the story editor, they went, okay, we don't care. It's not our money. It's not our money as far as we're concerned. We're getting paid. We don't care. And so I became the story editor that first season I was on the show. And I had 2 principal jobs. First, it was to oversee the transfer of the franchise from the comic books to every frame of our TV series. So I was the last word. I was the final typist, as it were. Every script went through me before it went to our department heads, before it went to casting, before we were done. Every script had to flow through me. I was the last word on making sure that every script, every moment felt like, an episode of Tales from the Crypt. My other job was writing Crypt Keeper segments. Now, just as the show never went through any kind of development process, and I never got a deficit partner, the Crypt Keeper never went through any kind of development process either. The Crypt Keeper in the comic books is an old white guy with stringy hair. The executive producers wanted their own Crypt Keeper, and one day, entirely by happenstance, at a storage facility, Joel Silver bumped into special effects maestro Kevin Yeager, who kept a bunch of his stuff there. In time, Kevin would go on to create the Crypt Keeper, Chucky, but Kevin he had worked for Stan Winston. He had a lot of incredible creations inside the storage facility. And when Joel saw it, he fell in love, and he said, Kevin, you got to make a Crypt Keeper for me. And Kevin, okay, I'll do that. And so Kevin created the Crypt Keeper puppet, which is actually 6 puppeteers. 6 puppeteers are the Crypt Keeper, and one is the right arm, one is the left arm, 3 are working the servos of his face, his cheeks,
it's a brilliant piece of puppetry. What do you say?
The other one controls his lateral movements and his back and forth movements. And Kevin found John Kassir, and John became the voice of the Crypt Keeper. But no one ever asked the question, okay, so who is he? Who is this character? Whoever wrote the episodes in those first 2 seasons, they threw some lines at the Crypt Keeper, and that's what they shot.
So the Crypt Keeper was still there in seasons 1 and season 2. Okay.
He's the puppet called the Crypt Keeper, and he's like the Crypt Keeper, but one of my jobs was to write all the Crypt Keeper segments, and I don't know how you write for a character who doesn't exist. So simply to do my damn job, I had to invest a character. I had to invest in with a character. I grew up a drama-rama in high school, loved old movies, loved the Marx Brothers. The Crypt Keeper became my own little personal Groucho, and had to put a personality in him. And being a writer and being therefore somewhat lazy, I reached for the closest personality at hand, which was me. So although it looks like Kevin's puppet, it sounds like John's voice, every thought in his head, every word that came out of his mouth was me. Over the course of that third season, something happened, supposed to be the last season. Between reinvesting in the franchise elements in the comic book and putting them on screen, between Gil and I going after the biggest names we could get, the vision of feature film vision inside a little TV box, going back after big stars. But more than anything else, it was investing a personality inside the Crypt Keeper that at the end of the day really changed the franchise's fortunes. He became the franchise.
Yeah.
A bunch of years ago, not that long ago, 5-6 years ago, just before the pandemic, TNT wanted to do a Thursday night horror wheel, and one of the spokes of the wheel was going to be a brand new Tales from the Crypt. M. Night Shyamalan was going to be the executive producer of the whole thing, and he had gotten a hold of the rights, an option to the rights of the comic books. He bumped into a problem. The Crypt Keeper he now had the rights to was the old white guy with stringy hair. The Crypt Keeper that's in the TV series, that's a completely separate piece of intellectual property, of IP, owned by the Crypt partners. Now, the thing about the Crypt partners is the partner who always walked point on Tales from the Crypt certainly was Joel Silver. And Joel he's one of a kind. He is a larger than life personality. He is an impresario as a producer. He's produced some of the biggest action franchises there are, Matrix, Lethal Weapon,
Predator.
Yeah. Like I say, he's larger than life. He also happens to be one of the biggest effing a-holes on the planet. He is movie characters have been created imitating him. Swimming with Sharks is all about a Joel Silver like producer that Kevin Spacey is playing. Yes, many movies have been made where a Joel Silver like producer was deliberately created. Hey, Roger Rabbit. At the very beginning of Roger Rabbit, Roger is doing a piece, it goes wrong, and the director rips him a second a-hole. That director is played by Joel Silver, and Joel Silver is playing Joel Silver. It's the most amazing in-joke. It's the most amazing in-joke.
That is Joel Silver that is playing that part?
It's Joel Silver playing the director playing, and he's playing Joel Silver.
So it's like a meta. Like...
Yeah. It is a wonderful in-joke. If you know what you're looking at, it's hilarious.
I'm thinking about it right
hilarious.
now.
What was
that's so funny. Going back a little bit to talking about the Crypt Keeper. With the Crypt Keeper, you come in on the third season. So what you talk about developing Kim? What was the one thing that you really wanted to add to him that you felt like was missing?
My question was, and this is what I put to Barry Josephson, who worked for Joel, is the one interview I had, because they didn't know who I was and they wanted to meet me. And I said, here's my question. What does the Crypt Keeper do at the end of the production day when he punches the clock and goes home to his crypt? Well, okay, what does he have for dinner? What does he watch on TV? What are his hobbies? Does he have friends? What does he like to do? And my question was, who is he? who is he really? I didn't want to know his backstory. That's not what I was going for. I wanted to give him a deep, rich interior life, and that's what opened up the character.
Mm.
I I do a lot of recently I've started to do as many local horror conventions as I can. I love meeting up with horror fans. The most wonderful, the sweetest people. When you go to a horror convention and half the room is dressed up as Freddy Krueger or Leatherface or Jason, you would
They're the
think it'd be
nicest people.
madness, but they're so sweet because they've sublimated all their anger at the world into those characters. And so they walk around in kind of a blessed state. I say that as an atheist.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
quite remarkable, and I love being around them. Quite many as I sit there meeting them, they will tell me that Tales from the Crypt was the gateway drug to horror for them. And in many cases, they watched it despite the fact that their parents told them, you are not watching that TV show. Or actually, more likely, they watched it with their parents who were horror fans who thought this is the perfect way to introduce someone we love to something we love.
I had to sneak it because I mean I saw maybe the later seasons into it, but I remember the Crypt Keeper, and that was such a iconic. When you think of it, he is that series, and he's such a fascinating
he
character.
tells you we're in this together. We're both having a laugh about this. We're going to go some pretty disgusting places, but we're laughing. He made it okay to do all the horrible things that we did.
Interesting. That's a good
we
way
did
to
some
look
really
at it.
horrible
He
things,
reminds
but
me
I
a little
think
bit of Freddy Krueger, where he's kind of in on the joke.
In some of the episodes, yes. In some of the movies, yes. When we did the series, that was the Freddy Krueger that we were tapping into, the funny Fred.
Yeah, the funny, not the serious, because he's kind of like he's telling the story. He's like the narrator before, and he's putting the book in between the two.
Yeah. So the Crypt Keeper was the difference. He really turned Tales from the Crypt around. Now, I can tell you that writing Crypt Keeper segments was the hardest thing I've ever had to do creatively. It was horrible. It was like pulling organs through your nose. It was we would batch them because we would get the puppeteers together and choreograph several, and we'd have to put the crypt set back together again. And so we would do 3 or 4 at a time. So I would have to write 3 or 4 at a time. So, all right, I have a huge list of things the Crypt Keeper. Okay, what would the Crypt Keeper? What could he be doing this week? What is his interest this week? What world are we going to take him into? And then, all right, if it's the world of golf, for instance, then all right, then a huge list of golf words. And which words can be cryptified? Can the Crypt Keeper turn into one of his? And if I could find enough words and then string sentences together that made some kind of sense and somehow led into the episode, all right, then that would work. But there were lots and lots of dead ends where, it started out so promising. There were 2 or 3 good ones, but not enough to justify the whole thing. There was always, it's not like you had all day to do this. You got to get this done. You got to get this done. You got to get this done. You got 5 more, you got 3 more of these to write, pal. And so because of the deadline pressure, you had to go for the ones that it was clearest. And then I would write them. They'd go out to everybody. And then I would go and I sit down with John and we would do what's called the beep track. And we do a little rewriting together. John was always so much fun to work with. That was probably the most fun part of the whole deal. And
we're talking about John,
John Kassir. I'm sorry, John Kassir, the voice of Crypt Keeper, sitting and recording with John. And then on production day, of course, the set would be there, the puppeteers would be there, and it took a small army to make Crypt Keeper segments because of all the choreography involved. And the director would yell action, and the beep track would start, beep, 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 and John's voice would be there, and the Crypt Keeper, who had been on the desk, would suddenly sit up, moving and talking, and hey, I know he wasn't real, but suddenly you'd forget that, and the Crypt Keeper would do whatever it was that he said, and he'd come to the end of his thing, and the director would yell cut, and the Crypt Keeper would sag back onto the, and you'd go, oh yeah, that's right, he's not real. Oh yeah, oh yeah. He would become real each and every time they yelled
A little
action.
bit. So a little bit like Kermit, how Kermit the Frog is. It's just a sock puppet, but when you put that thing there,
When you animate it, something, yeah, it gets something else gets animated. It's something that you're not intending to animate. A spirit of a kind, not a negative spirit, but really and truly, collectively, you have brought an inanimate thing to life in a very particular way.
Now, I want to go back to because you were talking about who is this guy? Who is the guy? Talk a little bit about what you found of who the Crypt Keeper was. Like what is he? He's just you.
It's just me. It's
just
no more
you
complicated. It's me. It's just it's me filtered through a Groucho lens. Just, you know, in the same way that the Marx Brothers were always screwing with the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the Crypt Keeper could screw with the world. The Crypt Keeper could make a commentary on how crazy the world was.
So would you think of, like, with the Crypt Keeper and you know where he is, you know, where you guys do the segments, he leaves. Where does he go? Just give us a little bit of a glimpse into that. Like, does that where does he go? Is that his home? Where he is in the
yes.
That is his home. Yeah, that's what I thought.
And it's got rooms and offshoots. It's wherever your mind can go, he's got a room for it.
I love that. I love that because so in season 3, you said the popularity started to explode with this character. What was that just like that season 1 and season 2 was missing? That season 3
he had an interior life.
Okay.
And because he was written with an interior life, John could perform him with an interior life. The writing gave John a chance
to
actually, he suddenly understood that there was more. It wasn't just lines thrown at the character. It was implicit in the way that we even worked together, the questions that I asked, the reasons, because now he was doing things that he had never done before. Well, what's the justification? Well, here's the justification. Who is he? Oh, well, that's a whole different way of thinking about him. No one's asked that question before. And suddenly we all began to invest the Crypt Keeper with an inner life.
Yeah.
And that all by itself, because we thought about that character differently.
Yeah.
This all gets manifested inside the work product, and that collective work product reflects
so
this whole different way of thinking about.
Gave him. The voice actor, something to chew on a little bit, and really, like, you know.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly, the attitude was attached to a perspective and a point of view. It wasn't just, you know, shotgun here, shotgun there. There was someone was holding the shotgun, as it were, and directing there. And so there was, as with any creative endeavor, you know, it's okay to play, but structure is a good thing.
So now you're seeing success in the 3rd season. How does HBO's view on the show look now?
Well, they ordered more seasons, so suddenly everyone recognized this is a good thing. And it was good for their business. After another season, and the Crypt Keeper now is wow. Suddenly, Budweiser called and said, "Hey, we'd like him to advertise beer for us." And suddenly, I made a merchandising deal with Joel. Now, that to me was that's a tell. Joel didn't give away anything to anybody. Kevin doesn't have a merchandising deal. John Kassir doesn't have a merchandising deal.
Yeah.
Joel made a merchandising deal with me. And the reason is because that's an acknowledgement that I increased the value of that franchise. The puppet itself, the voice itself, it wasn't until the interior life brought it all together that it became a franchise character that suddenly could be marketed outside of its own TV show.
Interesting.
That what I did to the Crypt Keeper turned it into a franchise,
Yeah.
a very different thing than just a character. It suddenly could live outside
Yeah.
its own world and live, in essence, in our world, in any world. And people
Right.
recognize, hey, it could be turned into a kids show,
Yeah.
into
Yeah,
a
they did.
kids show.
They turned
for
it into a
Pete's sake,
kids show. They did.
to a kids show. That's how we altered this character became, despite the fact of where it came from,
Yeah.
there was something embraceable about him because of who he was.
It's that universal flavor. Could you recognize once you were writing these scripts and these things, could you see like the change? Like what do you think was just,
When I look at seasons 1 and 2, I see
Yeah.
a talking puppet.
yeah, that's a good point.
And after I left, people continued to write things for the Crypt Keeper. He's done various things, but you can't really write for the Crypt Keeper anymore because unless you own him, you can't, and only
Yeah.
Joel owns him. But the occasion the people who wrote for John to say stuff on all the shows that they did, none of them understood. They were writing for the Crypt Keeper. They weren't
Yeah.
writing as the Crypt Keeper.
Exactly.
And the difference is immediately discernible. Immediately.
Yeah.
It's a very different way to think. It's a different perspective on the character. And so, yeah, if you don't think of yourself as the Crypt Keeper, if you don't come from within, you'll give him any old thing to say. Any old thing to say.
So when you
I
would,
lost my
when you
mind
would
there for a
write
second.
him,
I
it's
apologize.
okay. It's okay. When you would write him, would you have to get into a certain space of
Oh
mind
gosh,
to
yes.
do it?
Oh my
Okay.
gosh, yes. Yes. That's why I said they were so hard to write because
Yeah.
one, there was just the mechanics of getting the words right, but they had to fit into the voice in my head.
Yeah.
If they don't work, if the Crypt Keeper voice in my head can't
Yeah.
say those words to his satisfaction,
Yeah.
this is dying right here on my desk. It's not getting any further than this. So it had to. I performed it first before it went to John. I wasn't going to give John anything that. The last thing I would want with John to look at me and go, "What's this?"
What you
John,
could
and
hear.
so I knew whenever I was going to hand John something, John knew there on the page whether it was what is this. So just so I could look John in the eye.
Who writes like that?
It had to be honest. It had to come from the soul.
Alan Moore, the comic book writer, he had to get, when he would do his comics, he would get into the mindsets of the characters.
As we continue to tell my story, as we continue, that is going to echo the idea of being inside a head and not being inside a head. Now, this was success beyond anything I thought possibly going to experience in my life. We were so successful that Universal Pictures said, "Hey, this makes great feature films." And the concept was it's an anthology. Every movie's different.
Yeah.
And of course, we jumped up and down and said, "Hooray, hooray. That's exactly what we want." Gil was supposed to direct the first Crypt feature, but for a little while we dallied with doing From Dusk Till Dawn, but ultimately we couldn't make a deal with that one. There was this other script called Demon Knight that everyone, the partners and the Brain Trust wanted to do. Gil did not want to direct a monster movie.
Yeah.
And so he begged off doing the first one. Neither Gil and I are horror guys. And the one thing we were terribly afraid of was the town pigeonholing us, which is what the town does. And so the one that Gil was going to direct, that we were going to write, we didn't want it to be straight up horror. We wanted to show the town that we were multifaceted.
Yeah.
And so when Gil bowed out of directing Demon Knight and we hired Ernest Dickerson instead, and Ernest, phenomenal director.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, what an amazing visual director. He was Spike Lee's director of photography on a bunch of great movies. Got an amazing cast. Billy Zane is an amazing horror movie villain. He's sensational. Jada Pinkett and Bill Sadler are wonderful heroes. The whole cast of that movie is terrific. But while we were producing that and working on another season of Crypt, we were also developing what we expected would be the second Crypt feature. And Gil and I had found a script called Fat Tuesday was its original title, and we developed it into a thing called Dead Easy. And this was a taut psychological thriller about a recovered memory. It took place in the swamps outside New Orleans. It had a tremendous villain, a monster, this Harlequin character, great franchise character. There was a whole bunch of movies in that character. Oh, holy cow. Universal Pictures must have been down with it because we were spending money. We spent 6 months in New Orleans prepping that movie. We were casting. We had hired a young unknown named Salma Hayek to play the female lead. We were in New Orleans prepping the movie 3 weeks before the start of principal photography. Universal Pictures called us and they said, stop, don't spend another penny on that movie. You're not making it. Get on an airplane, come home. And so 3 weeks before the start of principal photography, we got on an airplane, we flew back to Los Angeles. And when we got there, Universal Pictures said, you're not going to make that movie, you're going to make this other thing instead. And they stuck this script under our noses. It was called Bordello of Blood. And they said, your release date hasn't changed. You still start shooting in 3 weeks. Get to work rewriting this thing, guys. Where did Bordello of Blood come from? At about the time that we were making Bordello, Dead Easy, a new studio had come into being called DreamWorks. And DreamWorks was Steven Spielberg leaving his deal, not the lot, at Universal, and setting up shop as a studio. And as a studio, he'd start making deals, and Universal was desperately afraid of losing another big piece of talent. One of my executive producers, Bob Zemeckis. Steven was his mentor. And so Universal approached Bob and they said, Bob, I don't know any other part of the deal. Obviously, Bob stayed. I know one deal point. Universal Pictures agreed to buy for $500,000, $500,000, the first students that Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the future Back to the Future writers, ever wrote when they were students at USC, a thing called Bordello of Blood. $500,000, just a way to put some money in Bob's pocket, part of a larger deal point, larger deal. But then Universal sat there thinking to itself, wait, are we just going to eat this $500,000? Hey, wait a minute. Bob's about to executive produce this other horror movie, this Dead Easy thing. We spent, what, $50,000 on that script? Screw that. We'll take it out of their budget. Guys, you're making Bordello of Blood. It's got Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale's name on it. That's bigger than Alan Katz and Gil Adler's name, isn't it? And so for that very cynical reason, we went from making a project that the entire creative team had been working on for 18 months. And we were all the entire Crypt creative team. And making Tales from the Crypt, every single person who worked on that show would tell you today, as they look back on their careers, that was one of the highlights. Because of all the incredible freedom we had making Tales from the Crypt. Over the 70 some odd episodes that I oversaw, I got a total of 3 notes from HBO. 3. That is insane, a wonderful amount of creative freedom. Well, that creative freedom went everywhere for us to do our jobs. Suddenly we went from the epitome of the collective creative experience to, I'm sorry, we're making a student movie because of a deal point. This was a movie that literally nobody wanted to make this movie. This was not something that any of us wanted to do. And when you start making a movie for a reason as cynical as that, or any creative endeavor whatsoever, for a reason as cynical as that, do not be surprised when your day is stupider than the day before it. And that is exactly what happened over the course of making Bordello of Blood. We went from really the best possible creative environment you could be in to the worst. And once Universal made this terrible decision, every single decision seemed to be trying to outdo it for terribleness. Well, for instance, as we were gonna, the problems with rewriting that script were huge. The main character, for instance, is a small town detective. Now, ask yourself, how much business can a detective really do in a small town?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Not enough to be a small town detective. This is a character who does not exist except in the minds of film school students who don't know anything. Who they're nothing outside of the academic
it's like,
environment.
how is he? Yeah, it's like, how is he existing?
It's a non-character. So as you go to rewrite it, trying to invest it with, I don't know, an inner life, so that, and you could hire an actor. So when the actor goes, so why is he doing this way? What in his past?
Yeah.
There's nothing in that character where you go, well, okay, he grew up here and this happened. This and no, this is a completely a character that does not exist. Period.
Yeah.
Well, we're still, in terms of the. Now, let me come to the casting momentarily. We were going to shoot the movie in Los Angeles, but Joel was always at war with the IA, the union that represented our crew. And a little bit before this, we had been making a TV movie for Fox, and the IA had shut it down. And so Joel's attitude was, screw me, no, screw you. And so rather than do the movie in Los Angeles with our crew, we took it outside the country. We took it to Vancouver, so that we couldn't bring our crew with us. We would have taken our crew to New Orleans, but here now we couldn't. So we went to Vancouver, not because there was something in Vancouver that we needed for a movie. We went there to screw over the IA. Now, that bit us in the ass on multiple ways, because 30 years ago, 26, 7 years ago, when we made Bordello of Blood, Vancouver, which is now a great production hub, was a production hub, but it was not anything like the production hub it has now, with tremendous depth, talent in every conceivable direction. They can do everything, really and truly. That was not the case then. So yeah, with special effects makeup, for instance, well, they weren't up to snuff at that particular point with the kind of things that we wanted to do. That was one problem. Hey, we were there in July. We were making a horror movie. Horror movie is stock and trade. One of the most important things, going to do a lot of night shooting. Well, that's a problem when in Vancouver in July, it doesn't get dark really until we're heading toward midnight. And the first bits of light appear in the northern sky around 4:00. So really by 4:30, forget about it. If you're shooting outside, inside, you're shooting during the day. But if you're outside and you need night, you don't have enough. A film day is 12 hours, 13 hours. We had 4.5. Well, that's never going to work. It's never going to work. So, but that was a decision we made, not, it's a dumb decision that bit us in the ass.
Could you have gone back on that decision when you guys realized the mistake, or would that have just cost too much money to relocate?
Once the ship has sailed, once the executive producer said, we're doing this, you're doing that. There are no decisions get made, and now we're just the functionaries.
Yeah.
Our problem is, hey, you're professionals, we're paying you, you solve the problem.
What did they schedule the shoot for, like, days? How many days did they want you to shoot in Vancouver?
Well, we ended up shooting for about a month.
Okay.
5 weeks. And our crew was great. But we had no business being there. We really did not, none of us wanted to be there making that movie. There was not a moment of joy in it, and we'll get to the casting. Even before we got to Vancouver, we were in deep trouble. Like I said, the writing, the characters, none of the characters really added up to much. Still, we were able to find a couple of actors who we thought would work for it, and we wanted Danny Baldwin to play the lead, and Danny had agreed to do it, but Joel didn't want Danny; he wanted Dennis Miller. And to this day, I can't tell you why we hired Dennis Miller to be the lead in that movie. I had nothing to do with that decision. Joel would never tell us why he wanted Dennis Miller. Dennis was doing a show at HBO at that time.
Dennis Miller live.
Yeah. But his audience was one thing. Our audience was a completely different audience. And our audience wanted to see special effects makeup. They didn't care about a political comedian.
Why was he against Danny Baldwin?
He wanted Dennis Miller.
He just because he wanted that. Okay.
He wanted Dennis Miller for whatever reason. He wanted Dennis Miller. Dennis didn't want to do the movie, and he said, figuring it would be the kiss of death, he said, all right, I'll do it for $1 million. Figuring who's going to pay Dennis Miller $1 million to be in a movie? He'd been in 2 or 3 movies up till that point. He'd gotten paid scale. He's a scale actor in feature films. And he's a late night show on HBO. Why are you paying this guy $1 million? But once we committed to it, we were a $12 million movie. I didn't have $1 million for that actor in my budget. I had $500,000. We approached Universal. We said, can we get some little help here, a little breakage? And they said, we don't know why you hired Dennis. We think it's a stupid idea. We're not going to help you at all. Screw you.
Was there any way to get Universal to talk to Universal and say, listen, is there a way we can convince Joel to not hire Dennis?
They didn't care. They honestly, at that point, they did not care. Once they had made their decision, really, hey, here's the money. Go make your movie. Keep us out of it. And it's Joel, and they wanted to deal with Joel as the least they possibly could. So it's Joel's problem. Joel, you solve this problem. So we had to take it out of our budget. All the money was in special effects makeup, the stuff our audience wanted to see. So we took the money out of special effects and makeup off the screen to pay an actor our audience did not care about. This is ludicrous decision making. It's ludicrous. All right. We wanted for the female lead, we wanted Bridget Wilson.
Yeah.
But Joel wanted Erica Eleniak. Now, I understood, at least I knew why Joel wanted Erica, but that was never going to happen. She was in a long-term committed relationship. And the dalliance that Joel had in his mind was never going to happen. And Erica,
I thought Bridget would have added more of that, the spunk that I think the movie kind of needed from that kind of character. That would have added to the attraction.
Entirely possible. Our problem, look, Erica could have been okay.
You think Erica could have been okay?
But the problem was that Erica, as soon as she said yes to playing a former porn star in a movie called Bordello of Blood, decided she didn't want to be that kind of actress playing that kind of character in our kind of movie. After accepting the role. Now, the way that Gil is a terrific producer, and one of his really clever innovations, he likes to start production, whether he's producing or directing, he likes to start production on a Thursday. That way you get 2 days under your belt. If there are any massive problems, you have a weekend to rewrite, to talk to an actor, to redesign something, so that you can hit the ground Monday, your first full week of production, with hopefully any large production problems solved or at least being addressed. So we had started shooting Bordello of Blood on a Thursday, a couple of scenes in the bar scenes with the local Canadian actors. And Erica was supposed to fly on Saturday, to be settled in by Sunday, wardrobe Monday to work on Tuesday. On Saturday, when she's supposed to be flying, I get a call from her manager saying, Erica is not going to get on an airplane until you rewrite the script because she doesn't want to be that kind of actress and this kind of movie. Wait, what? And we were forced to rewrite the script. We finally settled on not a total revision because it's a thread, man. Once you pull the thread on this ugly Christmas sweater, the whole sweater is going to come apart. And so we agreed. She wasn't she was a former porn star who had been a plus size porn star. And the reason that she was unrecognizable now is because she was thin. We
see that I just watched the movie and I don't even remember that part at all.
It is, it's this stupid it's this stuff that had to be baked into the architecture to explain the character just so that she wouldn't feel badly about having playing this character. It was stupid. It was ludicrous. But
Joel wanted her as well, so you couldn't go back and try and get Bridget.
Once the executive producers make their minds up, ship is sailing, dude. Just there's nothing you can do.
No,
Erica did not want to be there. She did not. She made it explicit that she didn't want to be there. She hung in her trailer when she was on set. She was frequently convinced that we were getting shots of her that were more revealing her. There's nothing revealing in her wardrobe. What are
I
we
just
even
watched
talking
that. I
about?
watched that movie. That she's not even. I don't even see her. She's wearing like suits.
Gil Gil tells a story in the How Not to Make a Movie podcast season 1 about Erica was quite convinced that a shot he had was looking right up her skirt, and Gil said, "I am not anywhere. Look, no, I'm not looking up your skirt." I said, "You come over here and look at the shot. I'll go sit where you were, and you tell me if I can look up your skirt."
I watched that movie. There's no shots of that in any way, shape, or form.
That was Erica. Angie.
Yeah.
Now, Angie's a lovely human being. Angie does the best she can with the circumstances into which she was placed. Now, why did we cast Angie? Well, we wanted Robin Givens, Gil and I think Robin Givens would have given a really, I think that'd have been that might
She
might
would have
have
been
been
an
up there with Billy
interesting.
Zane.
She would have been an interesting thing because she would have gotten. I can see her pulling out that diabolical side to her that you can bring out that Billy
Let's
Zane had.
let's get to the reason why we hired Angie, and then we'll get to why Angie was always she was set up to fail. All right, so we were going to go make Bordello of Blood in Vancouver. At the same time that we were going to be making Bordello of Blood in Vancouver, our executive producers Joel and Dick Donner were making another movie in Seattle, just across the border, a thing called Assassins, which starred Antonio Banderas and Sylvester Stallone. At this time, Stallone was engaged to a supermodel named Angie Everhart. And one day on the set of Assassins, apparently Stallone approached Joel. He said, "Hey, Joel, you're going to be making a movie in Vancouver. Why don't you put my girlfriend Angie in the movie? That way we can visit each other across the border." And Joel, instead of being a responsible executive producer and saying, "That's a great idea, Sly. Let me check it with the guys, though. Make sure it works for them." He said, "That's a great idea, Sly." Period. And for that reason alone, Joel committed us to hiring the girlfriend of an actor on one movie to be the villain in another movie just so they could visit each other across the border. It's not like Joel thought, "I think Angie's this. I've met her. There's something in her. I think she'd be amazing. Trust me on this." That is not what happened.
Did
It
you
was
guys
to
even
make
do a audition or a screen test?
when Joel told us what this was. Yes, we said, "Joel, let us screen test her, please, please, please," and Joel agreed. And so we had some lines, and Stallone prepped her for the screen test. And we showed Joel the screen test, and that should have been it. It wasn't, because there was an ulterior motive.
This is like the Curb Your Enthusiasm season
But
where
there was an ulterior
come-
motive. There was an ulterior motive, and we'll come to it. Angie. So yeah, we hired Angie because of Sylvester Stallone. Angie, she was not a trained actress. She was a supermodel. And I have hired a lot of actors over the course of my career. And I can tell you this. I never hired any of those actors ever wanting them to act, not if I hired them for a movie or TV series. The last thing on earth I ever wanted them to do was act. And on the stage, yeah, the people in the back row have to see and hear you. You have to act. But the camera is right in your face, and it's right there. It sees everything. It will see you acting. What makes great film acting is actually not acting, it's being. And what great film actors do is they're, with a different name, some words are going to put in their mouth, they can tap into the raw, honest emotions when they need to. And can't act them. No, not in the least. You have to be them. The audience has to see you naked emotionally. That is how it has to work if you're going to succeed at all. Billy Zane is a terrific villain in Demon Knight, in Titanic, wherever he is a terrific villain, because he's not acting. There's darkness inside of Billy and egomania. And what Billy is doing is he is simply tapping into these parts of himself, and he is showing you pieces of his darkness. He is not acting them. Angie, alas, not a trained actress to begin with. Even if she had been trained, she would have had to act this thing because Angie is 100% a lovely human being. There is no darkness that I'm aware of inside of Angie, and whatever darkness is there is not sufficient for these
Yeah.
purposes. And it's not the kind of darkness you can tap into to
Yeah.
play a movie villain. So Angie was really hung out to dry because all she can possibly do, not having the technical resources or the darkness inside to tap into, all she could do with the part was play, was act villainous. And so it's not her fault at all. We hired someone and set them up to fail by by casting them in a part. They did not have the bona fides or anything.
Did she realize that she was miscast?
No,
Oh no.
no one thought of it that way. No one was thinking. I think it wasn't until later, in retrospect, as I thought about all this, and I thought about, okay, why was she doomed to failure? Was she doomed to failure? Yeah, and we'll come to how I began to think about Bordello. Um, Stallone had an ulterior motive in getting Angie on the movie. He intended to break up with her, which he did 2/3 of the way through the shoot. He called her and said it's over, and you know the whole deal is he always thought in his mind that we were a consolation prize for, and that's exactly what he said in the middle of the conversation. He said, "Hey, I got your movie, didn't I?" Now that turned her into a wreck. So not only from that point on was she acting over her head, as it were, but now she was emotionally bereft too. Thank you, Mr. Stallone.
So it's like a Julia Roberts on Hook situation where she's going through a breakup.
Oh, it's just
and it's impossible.
Yeah, it really is. What made it even worse was that we knew from the get-go that he was cheating on her. Because they were supposed to, in the first couple of weeks, yeah, she went and she visited him on his set. So our production office had to arrange to travel Angie from one country to another. So we coordinated that. Our production office and the Assassins production office had an ongoing relationship and conversations all the time. We knew what was happening on their set. They knew what was happening on our set. But we knew what was happening on their set. And we heard plenty of stories about how Stallone was screwing around behind Angie. There is a story about Stallone that he has never denied. And the only question has been on what set did this take place? And I'm going to tell you that this story happened on the Assassin set because I had never heard it before. The first time I ever heard the story was from my production office, who heard it from the Assassin's production office in Seattle. One day after shooting a scene, Stallone goes back to his trailer, unaware of the fact that his wireless lavalier mic is still broadcasting to the sound card. Awaiting Stallone in his trailer is a young woman who proceeds to fillet him. And apparently Stallone is very particular about how he likes to be filleted. And so now people are gathering around the sound card. Yeah, and they're listening to Stallone go, yeah, that's right. Cup the balls, stroke the shaft. Yeah, stroke the shaft, cup the balls. The next day, Stallone shows up on the set. The entire crew are wearing T-shirts that say, stroke the shaft, cup the balls. Like I said, I had never heard that story until my production office told me that story. And I really resented Stallone because he made us co-conspirators in betraying it. All right. Every day making Bordello of Blood was worse than the day before. Our Canadian crew hated us. When we finally got to the wrap party, our Canadian production coordinator threw the wrap party because if we had held a wrap party, the Americans, none of the Canadians would have come. That was quite clear. So
I heard that Gil had problems with the DP as well.
Yeah, Tom and Gil had their issues.
Yeah. So it's like you've got problems in photography, you got problems with the actors, you got problems with the crew. I mean,
we had problems with the executive producer just after shooting our third day of shooting. Joel decided to come visit the set after Gil had kind of cajoled him into it. And he calls Gil while Gil's in the middle of a shot and says, hey, all right, you have your way. I'm on my way to Vancouver, but I didn't bring any identification. So you're going to have to call Canada to tell them to let me in. And so Joel Silver, a grown adult, a grown man, flew across an international border in a private plane with not a single piece of personal identification and expected this grown man to be, oh, you're Joel? Okay. No. And so when the country of Canada treated this outsider like, who are you?
Who do you
When
think
Joel
I am?
finally, he went total a Tasmanian devil on them. And at one point, our production manager, Colleen Neistat, had lots of connections to government and the Canadian government there. And apparently someone at the passport control office knew that this guy talking about a movie probably had to do with our production manager, called her and she said, oh, okay, I can vouch for him. And so because our Canadian production manager vouched for Joel, they let him into the country. And so then we had to go find him because he was not in the part of the airport that we were expecting to find him. And so when we finally get him into the transport vehicle, he's Tasmanian devil on steroids. And Colleen, rather than taking him to the set, she wanted to show him the production facility that we had created. And so the first stop was our production office, where Joel went on a tirade. Our entire production staff with these lovely Canadian women. And they were not prepared for a human hurricane. And I got a call. I was on location and I got a call from my assistant that said, you better get over here. Everyone's about to walk out. And I ran back and I got to our production facility and Joel had just left. And literally people were walking out to the parking lot. They were quitting. And I got on my knees and I begged our Canadian crew there in the parking lot. I said, please don't do this. Please, I will make this up to you however I can. Please don't do this. Please don't. And I convinced them to stay. And when I finally got back to the set, there was Joel hanging with Gil. It was neither here nor there. But that's how it was. How it was.
He just comes in, creates a whole ruckus, but it's not my problem, so who cares?
Well, but every day was like that. When we left Vancouver, we did not have a finished movie in our hands, and there were reshoots that had to take place down in Los Angeles. And we could have made our release date. That was quite doable, but Universal didn't care anymore. And so we didn't make our Halloween release date the following year. They held us till the following August. Yeah. They dumped us in the doldrums. They dumped us in the doldrums of August. By the time the movie opened, we had, this is now was a year and a half later. We had done the last season of Crypt in London. We came back, and shortly thereafter, before the movie opened, things just went from bad to worse. And by the time the movie opened, I had been fired off the next project that we were doing, which was ultimately called Perversions of Science. I got fired off of that before it even started. And Gil and I
This is the Tales from the Crypt that was going to be for the science fiction version, right?
Yeah.
That never, which I think it was probably Joel. Okay. Because he was mad about the situation.
Gil and I broke up. We stopped being creative partners, stopped being best friends. We did not speak for 25 years. I had a problem because I've been putting Gil's, Gil didn't write every word that we wrote, but I saw, because we produced everything that we wrote. To me, the writing continued on into the production process. So in my mind, though, I was putting Gil's name on scripts that he had not a whole lot of writing involvement with. In my mind, he was always going to have involvement later because we produced it. But now I had to go out into the world and represent myself as a writer. All my work had two names on it. And me explaining, well, here's why there are two, utterly pointless. No one's listening to that. And so I literally had to restart a career with literally no credits. I had a huge credit in the can, but as a writer, I didn't have any credits to speak of. That was very hard. And basically Gil got all the social groups, the friends, and I got nobody. And so I had a good agent at that point, a guy named Nick Mechanic, and he got me onto a couple seasons of a show called The Outer Limits for Showtime. And that was good. But I really began a 2-decade-long descent into depression and a writer's block I didn't even know I was in. And on the plus side, I got to raise my kids because I'm falling off the showbiz mountain. It's really hard to get back on. Especially, it's everybody I knew was on the mountain except for me, and I couldn't get back there. And that was hard. And it turned out I was keeping a secret from myself for 45 years ultimately. How long I kept the secret. And the darkness got worse and worse. And 3 days before Christmas 2016, I came within literal inches of killing myself. And I knew I was in a very bad way. I knew I needed a mood stabilizer, something to mitigate the darkness in some fashion. But my dad was a surgeon. I grew up in the medical culture, and I knew that my GP, he had no background in mood stabilizers. The last pharmaceutical rep who walked through the office, they said, "Hey, you got any depressed patients? Try check them out on this. That's what we make." So that's what they were going to hand me. Well, mood stabilizers, we don't know a whole lot about them, even under the best of circumstances. It's a crapshoot in a lab experiment, even under the best of circumstances. I didn't want to be a lab experiment with none of the boxes ticked off. So I'd done a lot of my own research, and I found a mood stabilizer that I hoped would work for me and what I wanted. I still had that creative spark inside of me. I didn't want the mood stabilizer to snuff it. I thought if you snuff that, I'll snuff me. I'll finish it. And so I found a mood stabilizer that I thought would work. And after I nearly did myself in, I drove straight to my GP and I said, here's what I almost just did. Here's what I want to do. And he whipped out his smartphone and said, okay, that makes sense. And he wrote the prescription and I picked it up. I went home. I told my family what I was going to do. I took the first dose and then I got incredibly lucky. Within 36 hours, I leveled. I felt the medication put the darkness inside, not a box, but a cage. I can see the darkness and it can see me.
Yeah.
And it reaches for me, but it can't get at me now. It can't. And the darkness was this self-directed rage, self-loathing, deep, whatever. I was guilty. It turned out I've been keeping a secret from myself for 45 years. And once the darkness was no longer able to get at me, I could finally confront this secret. That was why I felt this self-loathing. It turned out when I was 14, I was sexually molested twice by the religious director at the synagogue where my family belonged outside of Baltimore. The first time is bad, but it's the second time that really does the damage, because the second time happened because I didn't say anything about the first time. And it's in the middle of the second time that the hook got set in me. And I know I said to myself, this is your fault. You did this. Well, that's not true. It's not a 14-year-old's fault that an adult is treating them like a sex toy. It's the adult's fault. But once you make that leap, it becomes like a template. And that then becomes the corner you go to whenever stuff gets hard.
I had an agent kind of do something similar to me like that in New York. And you automatically blame yourself.
Yes.
At first.
And it's not you. It isn't
and you didn't do it. Now, I never did anything, but I was in the room where it could have happened. I at least had the gumption to get out of it, but I blamed myself for a long time about it.
It's a very natural thing to do.
Oh man.
And it's a very destructive thing to do. It's not your fault, but it's not an unnatural thing to do. And so as I headed into adulthood, all right, taking the blame for things that aren't your fault, that doesn't solve anybody's problem.
Yeah.
Really, that's completely counterproductive in every way, shape, and form. And as life's problems get bigger and more complicated in adulthood, that templated behavior gets more and more destructive, and the rage gets bigger. And being in a 20-year, well, it is so true. Say about the truth setting you free. Oh, wow. It was amazing. That weekend when I finally confronted the secret, the Friday night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up, I slipped out of bed, didn't want to wake up my wife, and I went into the bathroom. I lay on the floor and I wept several hours for the 14-year-old me who someone needed to say, it's not your fault. It's
It's
not your
okay.
fault. It's okay. Well, all right. Once I could finally tell my own story with absolute honesty, to me, let me reverse that. If you can't tell your story to yourself, can you really tell anyone else's story? No, you can't. Once I could tell my story to me with absolute honesty, well, suddenly telling any story with absolute honesty became all right. During the pandemic, a Tales from the Crypt fan group had formed. There's 3 guys from various parts of the country, Tales from the Crypt fans, and their podcast it's called Dads from the Crypt. They review all the episodes of Tales from the Crypt and give parenting advice. I thought that was hilarious. When Jason Stein reached out to me the first time, he said, "Hey, we're going to be reviewing an episode. You want to sit in with us?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds like fun. It's great." So I sat in, gave my parenting advice. And a few weeks later, Jason reached out to me again. He said, "Hey, we're going to be reviewing Bordello of Blood. You want to sit in again?" And I said, "The story of the making of Bordello of Blood is not a half hour with you. It's a podcast unto itself." And that was the impetus for the first season of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast, The Making of Bordello of Blood. And I realized that was what I needed to do, to tell that story of really from start to finish with absolute balls to the wall honesty. Now, there were 3 people I wanted to call out. Dennis Miller, we paid you $1 million. You could afford to be a nicer person.
Yeah.
Stallone, because of everything I just told you about. He made us co-conspirators in betraying a very nice person.
Yeah.
For that, he deserved to be called out. The third person I needed to call out was me, because I did a piss poor job. I got paid as the producer. I should have done a far better job. But now I understood why I was such a weak producer. I understood why I had no confidence. Why I could let this happen from start to finish. I understood that my lack of confidence really originated when this adult separated me from myself.
Yeah.
I lost connection with me. And once I saw me, once I heard me, once I knew my story for real, I didn't want the actors' perspective, because this was about the creative team, the people who went from making a show that was pure creative experience to its utter corruption.
Yeah.
And only the people who worked inside would understand the picture. And so that's why I wanted to talk from the production side and not from any of the actors. But the person I was especially going to have to get in touch with if I was going to tell this story the way I needed to tell it was Gil. And I reached out to Gil and I said, after we said our hellos, I said, "Look, here's what I want to do. I want to do this podcast about the making of Bordello. And I want to tell it with absolute honesty, and that includes everything about the breakup. I don't want to talk about anything beforehand. We're going to have this whole conversation first time live on mic. That's what I want to do." And he was rather fearful of it, as he should have been, but he agreed to do it with absolute honesty. And that's what that first season of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast was.
So very cathartic.
Entertainment Weekly called it the best film podcast of 2022. And the reason that Clark Collis, who wrote those words, he told me, was because after listening to the podcast, he was really blown away by the honesty of it. And he thought, "Are these guys for real? Is this a put on?" And so he wanted to talk to Gil and I to hear with his own ears, were we genuine? And the answer is, yeah, this was a story told with absolute honesty. And I found that telling the story in this medium was gorgeous. I loved working in the podcasting medium as a storytelling vehicle. A friend, as I went into the second season, the third season, that just became about talking to everyone I knew in the business, just talking about the craft of what we do and what happens when the craft sometimes turns to crap. But a friend from school approached me with a story that he wanted to turn into a movie series. And that ultimately became my first story podcast, The Donor, a DNA horror story. Hal, let's call him, to take any idea and turn it into a movie or a TV series, it's going to take you years to write that first script. Years. The average is 10. Really, that's a fact. The average, think about 10 years, really. All right, now let's say you did it in 3 years. You're really talented. You wrote this great script in 3 years. All right, now before you're going to take it into a network or executives to buy it and pay for the development and the rest of it, well, that's episode 1. What happens episode 2 and episode 3 and the rest of season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4? Who are all these characters anyway? You got to write what's called a Bible. Well, that's 50, 60, 70 pages. That doesn't write itself overnight. That's another year. And then, okay, now you've got the whole package put together. Just to get the executives to read it, to induce them to read, you have to create a pitch deck, a comic book, a PowerPoint comic book version, a couple of words and images. What's it about? Just to get them to read it. And if they do say yes, well, that doesn't really get you anywhere. You're just at the top of the development process. Now, there's a whole other chain you got to go through. Who knows what sausage is going to come out the other side? There are, at the same time, thousands of actors standing in your way. And at any one point, any of those actors can kill your project dead just because they're an actor.
Yeah. Or change it.
There are a lot of ways to kill a project. Now, to take the same idea and turn it into a podcast, there's only one actor standing in my way, and it's me. So long as I'm willing to do the work, okay, I got to go find the audience or help the audience find it. I will take that risk because in creating the content, I can tell the story exactly the way I want. There is no one wearing any kind of a suit telling me what to do for reasons that have nothing to do with the creative process. It is absolutely mine or ours, depending on, in the case of Hal, if I'm working with, it's ours. We own it 100%. We will tell the story exactly the way we need to tell it. That was my approach. Now, Hal's story, when I tell you what Hal's story is, you'll understand why you could never do this originally as a TV movie or a TV series, but you could back into it. We'll come to that. Hal worked his way through medical school in the 90s and the mid-1990s as an anonymous sperm donor. Mm-hmm. Jump forward 27 years, he's a successful radiologist. He joined 23andMe, curious about his health genes. It never occurred to him the ramifications of adding his DNA to a growing DNA database. That's what 23andMe and Ancestry are. He lost his donor anonymity, and suddenly 7 total strangers found Daddy, except 6 of them had no idea their actual biological father was Hal, a sperm donor. These were 25, 26-year-old adults discovering, bumping into the fact that you don't know who you think you are. You are not who you think you are. You actually, half of you comes from someplace you have no idea. And this was, of course, shattering for some of them. The 7th, one of the daughters brought a thing called genetic sexual attraction to the table. And genetic sexual attraction is something that the adoption community has known about for a long time. The woman who coined the term genetic sexual attraction, Barbara Gagne, gave up a son for adoption when she was 16. And she met him 25 years later. And she fell head over heels in love with him. He fell in love with her, and she was quite ready to have sex with him. She wasn't quite there. There is research and data that suggests that our feelings about incest, that the taboo doesn't come from the fact that we know we are genetically related to people. There's a lot of negative imprinting that occurs in the early years as we grow together. There's imprinting. And that, for the first 2-3 years of our lives, that has more to do with the revulsion we feel about incest than any knowledge. That's an intellectual conceit. That's an abstraction that we're genetic, that we have, DNA connections. Yeah. But the DNA connection can be very real when people who are not raised together meet in adulthood, and suddenly that similar DNA. These people describe an experience where they meet someone who they feel like they've known their whole lives. They complete each other's sentences. They laugh at the very same things. And if they're siblings, if there's any kind of a spark, as Barbara Gagne described it, she had never felt anything like that before in her entire life. Well, Hal had been married to a woman who brought a son from a previous marriage, who he raised, later adopted as an adult, but he never raised any children, genetic children of his own. Suddenly discovering that there were these 7 grown people who were his children, he was quite open. He wasn't going to be their father. He wasn't there for that, but he was quite open to being fatherly. He had quite a lot of money and was very open, because they were blood, to cutting them in on the inheritance. So for real, he saw them as family. But when this one daughter brought genetic sexual attraction to the table, the relationship that the donor-conceived siblings have between each other, they sometimes refer to each other as diblings. The relationship that diblings have is much stronger than the relationship any of them have toward their donor. And so the bond between the diblings, especially when the nature of this one daughter, and it's a story about inheritance and what we inherit. And so I had never heard a story like this in my entire life. And I have a taste for weird stories, yeah?
Yeah.
And the only way to tell this story was through a podcast. To tell the story with absolute balls to the wall honesty, which is the only way I care to tell stories. And that's 7 episodes. The donor, a DNA horror story, and there is absolutely multiple monsters, I think, but certainly one big monster there. And I found, as I was working on that podcast, telling it with Hal, that I had become the thing I always wanted to be when I grew up, which is a podcaster. While I was doing background research on the donor-conceived world, one of the people who very graciously agreed to give me lots of background information on what it's like to be donor-conceived was a woman named Donna Hall. And Donna, she learned at 40 that she was donor-conceived, earth-shattering to her. But the whole rest of Donna's story, I said, Donna, you're a podcast unto yourself. And she said, yeah, I know. I've been trying to turn it into one. Donna's got an amazing story. But great stories need to be told the right way to be great stories. It's really easy to screw up a great story. It's really easy. Donna, ultimately, this became my second story narrative podcast, the Hall Closet. And Donna grew up in the 1990s, in a lower tier crime family outside of Philadelphia. The Halls weren't the Corleones from the Godfather movies, but they made national headlines just the same. Donna's mom, Phyllis, maybe the worst mom ever. She spent 6 months in prison for child endangerment. Her stepdad, John Hall, a true criminal mastermind, he was the Philadelphia Police Department's favorite snitch. He put more than 25 people behind bars based on confessions that John Hall concocted to mitigate his own considerable legal jeopardy. Among the people that John Hall put away, his own stepson, Herb Hack, spent 18 months in prison awaiting trial for a murder he did not commit. John Hall put a man named Walter Ogrod on death row in Pennsylvania for 24 years based on a murder Walter did not commit. When Pennsylvania finally let Walter out, they gave him $9.1 million because of their mistake. Just a week ago, a man named David Dixon, the last person sitting in prison in Pennsylvania because of a John Hall confession, was finally let go. David Dixon was in prison on a murder, serving a life sentence for murder based on a John Hall confession. Donna describes what it was like growing up in a family where one or more of the adults was committing a crime of one kind or another every single day. Now, Donna's a wonderful storyteller. She's vivacious, not an ounce of self-pity. What makes her story, for me, remarkable, one, it's just, oh my God, what a remarkable story.
Yeah.
But it's her journey to safety and empowerment. And for me, I got to tell that story. So that became the Hall Closet. I suddenly decided that my little company, Kostard and Touchstone, and Kostard and Touchstone Productions, it's named in my very brief acting career. I was in 2 Shakespearean plays. I played Kostard in Love's Labour's Lost, and I played Touchstone in As You Like It. And both those characters are wise fools who speak truth to power. And that's what my little company is. We are wise fools speaking truth to power. And so I dedicated Kostard and Touchstone to making podcasts. And so I've got, in addition to the How Not to Make a Movie podcast and the Donor, a DNA horror story in the Hall Closet, I also got 2 more that are out right now. There's the one about Chinese medicine called Sage Wellness Within, and a new one we just started dropping called Just the Photographer with David Swanson. David is a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist who has covered everything from wars in Bosnia to Afghanistan to Iraq, natural disasters, Hurricane Katrina, the earthquakes in Haiti, to red carpet events. And he took one of the iconic 9/11 photos of the first responders down in the pit. He's got a Pulitzer Prize, but his pictures, they can tell you what it felt like. They can tell you what it looked like standing where he stood in those very dangerous places, but they can't tell you what it felt like. It's all about what it felt like being in these incredible places. So Kostard and Touchstone, we make podcasts. Now, pretty much most of, if not all of our podcasts would make great movies or TV shows. Yeah, they absolutely would. In fact, I've got a bunch of podcasts I want to do that I originally planned to do as movies or TV shows. I'm going to do them as a podcast first. Here's the thing. A lot of the song and dance that we have to do when we go and we write the script, and then in addition to all the summits, if you're going to go pitch it, you got to craft a pitch now. In addition to all the other work that you got to do. All right. The whole thing that you're trying to do in this pitch, you're trying to convey from your head to their head, what's the IP? That's the point. Once they understand what the IP is, they know what they're developing or selling. That's the key. Sometimes it's hard for the creator to nail down what their IP is, but that's the key. To convey the IP. Well, in the old days, I would have gone cap in hand to knock on their door. Please, can I sell you my IP? Well, now I've put the IP in the podcast. It's there on the table where everyone can see it. You all know what the IP is. And yeah, like I said, this obviously would make great movies, TV series. And so now, instead of me having to go and sell it to them, these are risk-averse people in executive suites. I'm asking them to take a leap into, well, here's what the IP is. You go into development. Now they don't have to. They're going to come to me going, wow, that I know what that would be. They're going to say, hey, I'd like to buy that from you.
So you created a research and development already.
And they're going to say, this made a great movie or TV show. I'm going to go, yeah, you're right. And they're going to say, here's a check. And I'm going to look at it and go, well, that's nice, but you need to add some zeros and move the decimal point over. You have competition. Stupid. I see podcasting and storytelling in this way as a way to flip the power dynamic completely away from the money and back to the creators, because we own everything. Yeah. We own it all. And that, I think, is the most revolutionary thing yet to be discovered about podcasting, how it's already happening. Hey, Rachel Maddow sold Steven Spielberg is doing I just went up on the title, but it's her podcast. It's being done as a feature film. Yeah. Well, that's the template for the future, everybody. And I think podcasting could easily become the development zone for bigger projects, because I'm going to say it costs nothing to make a podcast. That's not true. They cost money. If we were getting paid our time, our energy, our creativity, our expertise, and that's just the work involved. That's not the ownership of the material. Those are two separate things. The work to create is one thing. The ownership of the material is something else entirely. And so I believe, as part of my model, as cash flow begins to come in with every podcast, before we say we're in profits, you got to pay for the cost of production. And so I've got an idea in my head what every podcast costs, and everyone who worked on the pod, basically me, but my co-hosts, everyone gets paid for their work first. And after we paid for the work, then now you're into profits. And then every dollar is profit. Yeah. So as a creative venue, I think podcasting is, God, why would you want to make a movie and TV show? Why would you want to invest all that time? And man, you could spend years writing the script that 3 people will see, 3 executives.
Exactly.
Do it as a podcast. The whole world can hear.
It's a good point. It's the future. The future of development is here.
Holy cow, yes. Holy cow, yes.
Yellow. I think Yellow
Yeah.
is such an interesting story. One, you've got Kirk Douglas, who is, was in Paths of Glory, and you got his son.
That was the point. Now, it was supposed to be the last episode ever of Crypt, but after HBO decided we were going to carry on, it was kind of a celebration episode.
Yeah.
What Bob wanted to do, one of the movies he loved when he was a film student at USC, was Paths of Glory.
Yeah.
And so he wanted this episode, which was a World War I based story, to be his homage to Paths of Glory. Well, the lead actor in Paths of Glory was Kirk Douglas. And so Bob wanted Kirk Douglas. The original script, the script had been written before I went aboard. It had been written by the Thomas brothers, 2 big feature writers. They did not do a very good job. It was poor because they thought comic book and they didn't invest the characters with anything. So it was all one note up here on the surface. It was really,
yeah.
And Bob knew he could never send this to Kirk Douglas. He would get him. Yeah. And so since it was my job to rewrite all the scripts, Bob turned to me and said, I need you to get me Kirk Douglas, is what he said to me.
Wow.
We need to get Kirk. And so I did my revisions, bent on getting Kirk. We got Kirk. The one caveat to getting Kirk was that, he was having his youngest, I think it was his youngest son, Eric. He was trying everything he could to help Eric, who was a very sad story. Really, really sad story. So yes, we agreed. Yes, he can play the son. So, that was the one condition to hiring Kirk, was we had to hire Eric, but hey, we didn't care.
You also had Dan Aykroyd in there. You had Lance Hendrickson.
We got Dan and we got Lance Hendrickson. So we put a good cast out there. I mean, Kirk Douglas, nothing else matters. You got Kirk Douglas.
I know. I was blown away by that. I was like, wow, you guys got Kirk Douglas to do this one-off. I was just amazed.
It was remarkable watching us turn Simi Valley into World War I France sort of kind of. But working with Bob Zemeckis is always an incredible experience creatively. He is everything I know about the collaborative process. I've learned at that man's feet. Well, that and understanding how to do improv. If you understand how to do improv, the dynamic is yes and. You do not introduce the word no into an improv. That kills everything. But hey, do you like my hat? Yeah, I love the tropical birds on them. What are their names? Well, this one's Lois, this one's Fred. You're constantly adding information. That's what the creative process, that's how it works. If you dig in your heels, you just killed it dead.
Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. Welcome to the DMF. I'm Justin Younts. This is part 8.
When Bob did the second episode that I was on board for, You Murderer.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, that was the end of season 5, I think, season 6. And
you brought in the Humphrey Bogart idea.
We went up to Bob's house outside of Santa Barbara for lunch, and Bob said, after we had lunch, he said, all right, all I know is I want to do a completely subjective camera show from the point of view of a dead guy. Okay, that's what I want to do. That was how the conversation started. He said, oh, and I want the dead guy to be played by Humphrey Bogart. All right, guys, how are we going to do this? And so Gil and I set about figuring out how we're going to do this. Now, the trick was he was still playing with Forrest Gump and some stuff in there, and so he was experimenting. We were the lab.
You got the little
for experimentation. We were going to have about, at the end, there were 18 little snippets of Bogart where he was talking. So we had to figure out ways to get in and get out that were logical to the story. So there was a lot of puzzle making involved in putting the whole thing together. Plus, it's a subjective camera show. It's from one character's perspective, in essence, with minimal camera cuts with just a few, kind of like in Alfred Hitchcock's Rope, where it's in essence it's one continual shot the whole time. It's not. There are a couple places where it breaks, but Bob was going for, he was that kind of experimentation is what he wanted to do with this episode.
He loves doing that. He still does it to this day. He's doing the experimentation.
Why would you not want to be part of this? On the first, a typical example of how Bob works, the challenge to the creatives in the movie Castaway. In every single movie, there are 2 or 3 scenes that, if you know anything about filmmaking, you look at it and your first thought is, that's impossible. How did you get that shot? It's impossible. I know it's impossible. What did you do to get that shot? On Castaway with Tom Hanks, at one point there's a mountain in the middle of the island. And at some point he decides, I'm going to climb the mountain. And he climbs up to the top, and the camera is on his shoulder the whole time. And he gets to the top of the mountain. It's just enough for him to stand there, just barely enough room for him. But he gets up there and he does a 360 of the whole island, and he sees that it's surrounded by reefs. He's in the shot the whole time. Tom is in the shot the whole time. You see that there's no place, there's hardly anywhere for him to stand. Where's the crew?
Yeah.
The cameras back then, there were no GoPros, it was a big camera. Yeah. Where's the camera? Where's the camera? Where are the lights? Where are the whiteboards? Where is everybody? How are you doing this shot? This is impossible. But I know from experience that what happened when they were on location, Bob said, okay, guys, let's go. We're going to do that shot. And they all climbed up to the top of that mountain, and they looked at it, and Bob said, all right, guys, here's what I want. And I said, Tom's going to be climbing up there. He's going to come up to the top. He's going to have the camera on his shoulder. He's going to see him the whole time in the shot, and turn. And he looked at everyone there, looking at him as he stood there by himself, stood there looking down at them all. All right, guys, how are we going to do this? That's the question he asked. And then there are no wrong answers. There are answers that might not work all the way, but a piece of it might be good. And so he creates an environment where everybody buys in. Everybody invests. On the first day of You Murderer, because it was going to be the camera had to be able to go everywhere and everywhere. So we built what's called a 4-wall set, ceilings. And for that very first rehearsal, we never had rehearsal. Tales from the Crypt, you got 5 days of prep and 5 days to shoot. And you needed every one of those 5 days of prep. There's no rehearsal. But for Bob's episode, we built in 2 days of rehearsal, not for the actors, for the crew, because the shots were so complicated. And so what Bob did that first day, he brought everybody in onto our 4-wall set. So it's kind of cramped in there.
This is You Murderer, right? Are we talking about You Murderer?
You Murderer, yeah. And so the whole crew, and even the craft services, come on in to be part of it. Everyone sat in, and Bob had everyone there sitting. He said, all right, guys, here's where the shot's going to start. I think we start down here, like on the floor, and then we're going to move over here. We're going to move over there. Then, we got to go all the way over here. Blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to, then we got over here for this piece of action. And then we're going to end all the way over here with that kind of a shot. And he turned and he looked at us all and he said, all right, guys, how are we going to do this? And everyone invests. This is not his thing. It's our thing.
So that's how he does it. Wow.
That's how he does it. And that's why,
he shows you
the same people again and again and again.
And then he says, now how are we going to do it? And you're right. That's
now Bob
different.
has lots of, Bob's already got solutions in his head, but he's thrown it out.
Yeah. He's putting it out to everybody.
Because you don't know where the great idea is going to come from. And it creates an environment where, we're all in this together. We're pulling this heavy load up the same mountain together with the same end goal in mind. It's remarkable.
And that's what Dennis Miller did not understand, is that it's a team effort. It's not just, you may be taking $1 million, but it's a team effort and you need to be here to help us. And he wasn't.
I would think even if you sat Dennis down and you held his head in your hand and you explained it to him very slowly with words, okay, Dennis, you understand this word. He wouldn't understand. And I think it's just, it's who he is. He is not a collaborative person. Not everybody is. Not everybody can do improv.
Interesting.
Some people, it's too terrifying for them. They're control freaks. They have to be in control.
But anyway, so that's such an awesome. I mean,
was that in any way an answer to your question?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about. I just want to hear about like a little bit about Yellow, You Murderer.
Yellow. Yeah,
mentioning.
Yeah, Yellow was great fun to make, and then making the other episode with Bob. Yellow was remarkable. That's a real pinch me moment, you know. One of the doing Crypt was, as I said, was wonderful because of the incredible people I got to work with. I grew up a movie fan, a movie buff.
I was going to mention, I was going to ask you that.
I found myself working with people whose movies I loved. My first season, hey, I was a huge fan of Clockwork Orange. I hired Malcolm McDowell to be in my stupid little TV show. What world is this? What planet am I living on now? This is a remarkable turn of events.
Angie got Aubrey for Bordello.
And Aubrey, yeah. And it's funny, Aubrey and I, we actually met. We had a mutual friend who died, and we attended their funeral.
Mm.
And when I said to Aubrey who I was and what I did, he had already appeared in an episode, but we became good friends and we had lunch all the time. And then when we were going to do Bordello, there was a perfect part for Aubrey, and at least there was someone to have dinner with occasionally. Who you could.
And he owned that part. He owned that part.
A consummate pro. What a wonderful person Aubrey was. I miss Aubrey. Yeah, that's a shame. But I got to work with Aubrey. Hey, I got to work with Donald O'Connor.
Yeah.
You know, singing in the rain, make them laugh.
Yeah.
I sitting on a set with Donald O'Connor, listen to Donald O'Connor tell you stories about the good old days. Pinch me. I'll give you another moment that was wow. And this was on You Murderer. We cast John Lithgow and Isabella Rossellini. And Isabella decided she wanted to play the part like her mom, like Ingrid Bergman in Casablanca.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
And so that's her mother. When she came in for her wardrobe fitting, that was total pinch me. You're sitting there watching Isabella Rossellini come in and out with wardrobe saying, I think that looks like my mom. She's looking for, this looks just like, trying to look like Ingrid Bergman, her mom, and then telling stories about her mom and what her mom was like, what her mom. Yeah.
Wow, the whole film.
What am I doing? What am I doing here?
The whole film is set around a character that looks like Humphrey Bogart.
It's crazy. So doing Crypt was filled with those moments. Like I said, we got to work with the most remarkable people. Now, I'm not a star effer. I'm not. I'm fascinated. I'm not interested in meeting these people. I want to work with them.
Exactly.
I want to be creative with them. That to me that's what I'm after. Meeting is okay, but getting to be creative with these people, that's what I'm after. Kirk Douglas, Dan Aykroyd, lots of the big names, John Frankenheimer, even Bob and all the people I work for.
Frank Darabont, you worked with him,
The name that the one person we hired that was like, oh wow, I'm in awe. Buck Henry. Buck Henry was a writer. He wrote, but he was an actor. He acted in a lot of things, but he wrote The Graduate. He wrote the screenplay for The Graduate. He wrote the screenplay for Catch-22. He wrote lots and lots of great screenplays. He originally also co-wrote Get Smart when that was on TV when I was a kid. On Saturday Night Live, the original 5 years of Saturday Night Live, he was the most popular guest host. He was amazing. Buck Henry, just to me, because he wrote The Graduate, that was the person who I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't write the episode, but I wrote part of the episode. We wrote a song he plays the MC at a beauty show for morticians.
Okay.
And he sings a song. And so I wrote the lyrics to the song. One of the proudest things I ever did at Crypt was I put words into Buck Henry's mouth.
Wow.
I put words in Buck Henry's mouth. That to me was something that I don't know, inside my head was, look what you just did. Look what you just did. Yeah, that was exciting to me. That is goofy.
What about Whirlpool with Richard Lewis? What was that one like?
It's funny. Whirlpool started as a challenge to myself. I wanted to see if I could write a script within 24 hours, and I did. I wrote the entire script within 24 hours with really minor revisions thereafter. Now,
It kind of had a feeling of like Rashomon, where you're like kind of seeing
yeah,
things
yeah,
with
yeah, yeah,
different
yeah, yeah.
ideas,
Now,
you know.
now, it was written. It's period. It's 1950s.
Yeah.
It wasn't written when Mick cast it, and Mick is
Yeah,
notorious for doing fun, funky, outside the box casting. Nobody asked me, the writer and the producer, about the casting. Gil, I think Mick went to Gil and said, I got this great idea for the casting. And Gil said, okay, let's do it. They never asked me. And so when they dropped the bomb on my head, I got Rita Rudner to play the lead. The look on my face was, what? It didn't make any sense to me. There's nowhere in the script. Okay. If she plays the editor, you might could get away with it without explaining it. But as the comic book writer in that period, tell me how many women were writing comic books.
Yeah.
Like not very many. If you don't explain it, you're taking place in a universe that nobody recognizes. It's nonsensical. In my mind, you have to explain that, or it's taking place in a bull universe. Yeah. And so I thought it was a terrible casting choice. And I was really angry that no one asked me, because I would have explained to them why. It's a cool thought. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a Rita Rudner fan. My dad was a huge Rita Rudner fan. And so, but the casting had been made. She'd already accepted the part. They put it out and she said yes. And Mick saw the look. He saw that I was really unhappy. And that's why he said, look, why don't you play the part of Iggy? And so he cast me as kind of it was kind of the makeup sense. Yes. Yeah. It's kind of the makeup for having cast the part without asking me first. And I was really unhappy with the casting. So I had a good time doing Iggy. Rita's lovely, and I loved working with Rita, and working with Richard was a real pleasure. It was a hoot. I really had.
Were you happy with it, or do you still feel like disappointment of like it wasn't what it?
It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. To me, it's
I get it. What you explain.
It sticks out.
You're right.
It's right there. It doesn't make any sense.
It puts it in a fictional. It puts it in a fictional place.
It's even in the Crypt universe, the universe still has to it has to be an approximation of ours. It still has to make sense relative to our universe. It's got to be at least.
And that's probably what they thought. It's like it's Crypt universe, so we can do whatever you want. But you were like, I need it.
But it's not true. There are rules. There are rules, and you have to follow the rules that you established. You can't break your own franchise's rules. And in my mind, that broke the rule.
Did you guys create like a Bible of that as you went along? No, it was
holy cow! Holy cow! Making this up as we go along.
What about Death of Some Salesman with Ed Begley Jr., Tim Curry? That was
what Gil and I wanted to do as we sat down to write the script, come up with an idea. The movie we wanted to imitate was Kind Hearts and Coronets, where one actor was going to play multiple parts.
Yeah.
And that particular comic book, all right, so he's going to play all three members of the same family. It seemed natural. So it was a natural setup, con man, salesman, who's being conned. The family is the bigger con. They're really the con.
He thinks he's got him on, and it's like, no. And that's the great thing about Crypt.
They saw him coming. Yeah. They had him from the jump. So, all right, it's a cool story, perfect Crypt ending. The trick was getting Ed Begley Jr. was easy. It was casting the other actor in the piece. Gil wanted Tim. Yeah. And Tim's representative said, well, it's because it was about the same time as Carnival. And they said, well, no, he always goes to Carnival. He even if he wanted to, he'd never do it because he always goes to Carnival. And so Gil said, well, let me have lunch with him. I just want to talk to him.
Yeah.
They agreed. So they sat there at lunch, and Gil said to Tim, look, I just want you to know I'm not going to try to talk you into doing this show because you're going to Carnival, and that's how it is. But I just wanted to meet you. And so at one point, Tim said, so what is this part anyway? And Gil had been kind of priming him. He'd been kind of dropping hints. And finally, Tim said, so what is this thing anyway? And Gil told him. And hearing what the challenge was, Tim decided, as he said at the end of the lunch, he said, screw you. screw you. Now I can't go to Carnival because I have to do this. And it was the challenge. It terrified him. It scared the hell out of Tim. The challenge of doing the 3 parts, because the key was, it wasn't to do a caricature.
Yeah.
It was to really to cut as close to the bone as you can. When there's the sex scene, when Ed's character, the salesman, realizes that the only way out is through seducing the hideously ugly daughter.
Yeah.
And he was going to have to convince her. When we were scoring the sex scene and we got Michael Kamen to score the episode, Michael Kamen, I mean, holy cow, Michael Kamen's a feature guy. He's a feature guy.
You had Alan Silvestri as well. I mean, you had some great scores.
Gil and I, we went to a studio, a backyard studio that Dave Stewart of the Eurythmics at his house. And we went to Dave Stewart's little studio, and that's where we were listening to Michael Kamen's mix.
Yeah.
And the mix is great. We finally get to the sex scene, and he got the cue all wrong. He played the joke. He played it was a comedy cue. And Gil and I sat there. Everything was great up to that point. And Michael thinks he's nailed it. Michael's looking at us like, isn't this the best? And Gil and I are like, and we stop it. And Michael goes, what's wrong? And we said, you went the wrong way. You got to play against the joke. You can't play the joke. Don't tell us it's funny. Play the seriousness of the moment. Play it balls to the wall seriously. Oh my God, you're right. And he rewrote it. And it's a great music cue, but
there's another surreal moment for you. You're telling Michael Kamen how to change the thing around.
It's one of those, how am I going to, how do I explain to you that, you got this wrong, pal? But it was demonstrable why he got it wrong. And when he got it right, he could see that, oh gosh, yes, of course, this is, no. Sometimes you have to understand you got to really look at what the scene's about.
It's why you got to always be open, because if you're open to it, you be able to see your flaws. Whereas going back to Dennis, I don't think he can see that.
But ideally, look, the creative process. If you're open to being a full collaborator, collaborating in the collaborative process, and getting notes from your collaborators, sometimes when you get notes from people, the problem with notes isn't necessarily that the note is bad; it's that they don't know how to articulate what's bothering them. And that's where most of the problem happens. And the harder they try to articulate it, the more they kind of fog it up. And sometimes the best thing you can do is, with a note that bothers you, ask them to explain it. But really spend time. Get down to the bottom of what's really bothering you. Don't tell me how to fix it. Tell me what's bothering you. Exactly. What are you reacting to? And if you get to the thing that they're reacting to, then you suddenly realize, okay, that's where it starts. And then they might be able to help you find, all right, so if they did this instead, that wouldn't bother you. Yeah. And suddenly you realize, that's a good note, actually. Yeah, they actually saw something, and they just couldn't articulate what the problem was. So yes, you have to be open all the way through the process, even to criticism. You got to hear what they're actually saying. Yeah. Because really, you'd be shocked where the great note will come from if you just hear it.
So Tim Curry, I assume, was really great to work with.
A pleasure. What a lovely person. I'm so sorry for the health issues he's been having.
I know. Isn't that sad?
But you're looking for a great collaborator. And here's someone who, it was a challenge that scared the crap out of him. It scared the crap out of all of us. Yeah. This could have been horrible, but it's not. It works, and it is a testament to the collaborative process and all the things you can do with it. Todd Masters did some of some great work creating those 3 different looks for Tim, and then because of a weather issue, we had to swap the schedule around, and he had to start laying on stuff on applications to Tim before they were ready. It was, and he still pulled that off too. Everyone managed to pull off really genius,
and then
under incredible duress.
who's doing that, he's so good at that, he's just like, oh, you give me that $100 and I'll make sure that this doesn't, nothing happens.
Are you talking about Todd?
No. Ed Begley Jr.'s
Oh,
character.
oh yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
When he's
Oh
taken.
yeah. Well, the premise, yeah, the premise, yeah, that's why the way that we cast Crypt.
Yeah.
And part of why it was
a little bit,
what made it a little bit easier. We would cast people against type. So Ed didn't usually get to play villains at that point in his career. He was always the nice guy. We cast him as a villain. He got to have sex with the girl in the shot. You got to do that before.
Well, you guys brought back James Remar, who, and doing the thing with Whoopi. I can't remember the name of the episode.
The episode is
which you actually bring Whoopi back.
It's called Deadweight.
Yeah, Deadweight.
Deadweight. It was the first episode that I wrote. It was the first episode that I wrote that we produced.
Yeah, it is the first. Yeah.
That was exciting. We got Whoopi and we got James, we got Vanity, and we got John Rhys Davies.
Yeah.
The first day of the production meeting, I learned a very valuable lesson about how to be a writer-producer. Very valuable lesson. Screenplays, writing for the screen actually needs to have two different lives. I've learned in the interim. Its first life is as a sales tool, and that's where you get to be all poetic. But really, after it stops being a sales tool, and now it's a technical document that the department heads need to work from, you need to get rid of all the poetry. I learned that lesson this way. In that first episode of Tales from the Crypt that was mine, I was very poetic. And the first lines of Deadweight, it's hot. It says, so hot, even the palm trees are sweating. The production meeting begins, and since I'm a producer, I'm sitting at the head table. I'm one of the head muckety mucks, and our whole crew is sitting there. There are about 40, 50 people sitting there in the room, and our wonderful production manager, F.A. Miller, starts the meeting, and he begins to read as he goes through the scenes. Okay, fade in. It's hot. It's so hot, even the palm trees are sweating. He turns, he looks toward the special effects people. How are we going to make it look like the palm trees are sweating? And now begins a conversation about how they're going to make it look like the palm trees are sweating. And I'm sitting at the front table thinking, oh God, no, we should never have a shot. We should never see the palm trees sweating. No. Oh my God. And after about 10 minutes of conversation of how we're going to make this happen, I finally get up the courage to put up my hand and say, that was just metaphorical.
Yeah.
And F.A. looked at me and he went, moving on. I was so put in my place, and I learned right at that moment, take the poetry, get it the hell out of here. It does not belong.
Because we got to see it,
well,
everything's on there.
Document.
Yeah, it's the document.
At this point in its life, this is a technical document for department heads, so people can get their work done. If there's a word in here that does not relate to anyone getting work done, it does not belong in this script. Get it the hell out of here. You're wasting someone's time and money.
The palm trees are sweating. All right, how are we gonna get the palm trees sweating?
Oh man.
So what about what's cooking? That's another one that was that you did, because I watched all the ones that you wrote.
Thank you. There's nothing funnier than cannibalism to me. That's hilarious. Always hilarious. Anything.
You got Superman to do it as well.
Well, yeah, we got Christopher. This was an episode that Gil was going to direct, and so yeah, we wrote the script, and it was, I think the script worked out once it's about the relationship between the husband and wife. Really, that's how we get out of the danger, because she knows he would never put bullets in the gun. That's how they figure out that Judd Nelson's character it was great fun. There was a fun episode to do. The most challenging. There are two stories worth telling about that episode. The most challenging part was the special effect, which is the cutting up of the butt steak.
Yeah.
And now, Victoria Burrows, our casting director, had the brilliant idea of casting Meatloaf.
Yeah.
And to me, it was just hilarious casting Meatloaf in a show about cannibalism. Just hilarious. Now, I was a huge Meatloaf fan. When I went to college, when I was at Vassar, Bad Out of Hell, we must have wore out a couple copies of that.
That's good CD. Good.
When we cast him, well, we first got his name. It was about a month out. And we say, oh, we want Meatloaf. And we didn't actually get him cast until about a week before he worked. But we thought it would be Meatloaf or someone who looked like Meatloaf. And so we all knew what Meatloaf looked like. Now, to make a body cast of that kind, it takes a month. It takes several weeks. You need lots of lead time to create, especially all the stuff that we want to do with that body cast. We needed time. So we did a body. So Todd found and someone who we thought had the same body type as Meatloaf, and he did the body cast. And the day before he was to work, now that we have Meatloaf, he comes in for his wardrobe, and he walks in the door, and it's shocking. He's been on a crash diet. He's just lost 85 pounds. And he doesn't look anything like, well, he wanted to see the body cast. And so we show him the body cast, and he's mortified because I just lost it. I just lost 85 pounds. I don't look like that naked anymore. Oh my God. He's horrified, but nothing we can do. The ship has sailed. It is what it is. But that's not the worst of it. In order so that he'll look right in his wardrobe, because the body that's hanging there's got to look like, in the scenes where he plays, it got to look like he looks like that naked under his clothes. He has to wear a fat suit under his wardrobe. And that is what really pissed him off, because he had just lost all this weight and he's now sitting around the set all day in a fat suit.
Well, we see he was fat. That's so funny. Wow. I mean, this talking about like going against type, Christopher Reeve, like he, doesn't really play that kind of character. So that was another one. Was he good to work with?
Christopher was. Gil had a bit of a bump with Christopher early on, but Christopher had a particular style of working that once Gil understood what the relationship needed to be, kind of master slave in a way. Christopher, he likes having directors kind of put him in his place.
Okay.
It's just what he needed internally. I remember
like that in somewhere. Yeah. I remember him talking about that with Anthony Hopkins.
I remember an early conversation, we were talking about his wardrobe and trying to figure out what kind of shirt he would wear. And he was, even in choosing his wardrobe for that character, Superman was always in the back of his head. What he knew would be he knew what I guess these days we would say Christopher knew what his brand was.
Yeah.
And I guess he intended to continue being Superman for as long as he possibly could. And so he wasn't going to do anything that would wreck his capacity.
So he was stuck in that mind. I didn't realize. I saw that documentary that they did of him.
Well, Superman's an unusual part to have to cast. Now, I mentioned earlier, you cast actors to be, not to act. Now, as Bill explains at the end of Kill Bill 2, what makes Superman unusual is that Superman's the disguise, Clark Kent's the disguise.
Yeah.
He is organically Superman. So when you go to cast the character, you're not casting Clark Kent. You're casting Superman.
Yeah.
And so the character, in the same way, you can't act being that character. You have to, somewhere in you have to be that stalwart, steadfast, somewhat vanilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has to be you there. And yet conflict, but it takes because you can't act the part, you have to be a certain way in order for you to be successfully cast as Superman. Not like Batman. Batman can be, you can play that character any number of ways, it'll work. Superman, you're locked in.
It's funny you mentioned that, because in that documentary, he talks about how after Superman, he had a hard time getting outside of Superman. And that's why I'm like, here's his chance. And he's still got Superman, though.
He's not the first Superman actor to have a problem.
No, just look at all of them, most of them. Brandon Routh. I mean, so many of them. David Gordon Sweet. We don't know if it'll hurt him, but
I would suggest it has as much to do with who they are as the part, and it's because of who they are that they got the part.
Yeah,
and it's a part that if they can't stretch too much beyond that, or if it's not so much their fault. They almost all of them can. The town won't let them. It's not their fault. It's the town. The town gets it in their head that that's who you are. We get sucked into the same incorrect thinking, as the audience does, that Superman, he can't do that. No, he's an actor.
But you were kind of asking him, though, to go out of that with this part.
That was the nature of our casting. We always cast against type.
But he seems like he's reluctant to do it. So, like, you're saying it's the town, but he's got the chance, I don't know.
Actors are very complicated, conflicted people.
I know.
You probably know this as a fact.
I know that. I know. Yeah.
I'm not telling you anything you don't already know organically.
But that's interesting that he was because I saw you guys pushing him outside of Superman in this. He was trying to, but he's still kind of, I see what you mean. He's still kind of Clark Kent in there. He's not, it's still there.
Yeah, it's always, there's always something dressed up hiding who he really is.
Interesting. What about the one, I watched the one that you did with Dylan McDermott, where it's almost like a film noir type film, where he's got the thing. I thought that was a really interesting one, because you had the whole vaccine thing, but it struck me so much as film noir. Was that kind of what you were going for with that one?
What the name of it was. Noir is baked into the source material, so very natural for us to be noir-ish. That was also half the fun. We were always flirting with noir, if not outright sleeping with it.
Dylan, the way his voice came out in the monologues, it really felt, noirish. It was just, last one I want to talk about is, so you guys moved. Why did you move the series to England? What was motivation behind that?
It was a combination of two things. Well, we had in the total canon of Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, crime suspense stories, the 5 different comic book series titles that we drew from. There were about 230 some odd comic books, but of the 230, about 110 were useful. The majority were stories that were, even as comic books. Oh, that's so lame. No. It was, and it's a comic book, so it's good for 5 minutes of material, maybe. So you're going to have to create the whole world. Of the remaining 110 comic books that we had to work from, there are 6 story types, 5 or 6 story types, and everything is a variation on the theme after those 5 or 6 types, with diminishing, to diminishing effect. After you've done it once or twice, the gag is the gag, the gag is the gag. So by the time we got into the later seasons, we were getting tired. The feature films were taking their toll on the creative process. We did the 7th season after we came back from Vancouver, after shooting Bordello of Blood. And Joel was still angry at the IA, so I'm not even going to shoot the last season in Los Angeles. We're going to go, hey, here's a good idea. Let's go to London.
Was it always intended to be the last season? 7th?
Yeah, I think because we were supposed to move on from there. HBO had we were going to do the sci-fi series. So episode 7 it was agreed was going to be the last, and we were going to all segue together, one big happy family, into whatever the sci-fi show was going to be. So
but you guys weren't going to move the Crypt Keeper to sci-fi. You could
whole new creation. the Crypt. We were done with the Crypt. We had 90 some odd episodes in the can.
Yeah.
We're going to start building a new franchise from the ground up. Yeah. So going to England was in part a screw you to the IA again. It was in part, hey, this is a nice way to freshen it up. It sounded like a cool idea. It was bad for our crew, which made it suck.
Yeah, you talk about the
Taking it
logistics
over. It was fun being there, but it was not fun doing the show there because our methodology, our process was not. It didn't translate easily. We would work. We would shoot 3 days in and 2 days. Yeah, 3 days in and 2 days out.
Yeah.
So we would give, because Greg Melton, our amazing production designer, we don't have any standing sets. We're an anthology. Every episode, it's a whole new world that has to be created from the jump.
Yeah.
That takes time to build the sets. And so, we would do 2 days out, in essence, to give Greg additional time to get the sets done. Sorry, I just went up. What episode were we talking about?
We're talking about moving the series to England.
Oh yeah, okay. So building sets is relatively is cheap and easy in Los Angeles because lumber.
Yeah.
And guys would show up, they'd get out of their 4x4s or their trucks, and they'd get all the tools you could possibly want that we were renting from them. They'd take it in and get to work. In England, first of all, wood's really expensive. Really expensive. Most of the set building they do, there's the thing called speed rail. It's metal. They don't build sets the way we do. So right off the bat, great locations there. Hey, you want a castle? You don't got to build a castle. Go find a castle. When construction crews show up for the day to do their work, they've just gotten off the tube, the subway, the metro, and they show up. Tools? Yeah, where are the tools, guys? We didn't have any tools. So, for Gil and I,
it sounds like what Cameron went through when he was doing Aliens. He said, they would, as soon as it was tea time, they would break for tea time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we will get to that too. Yeah. It's funny. When we, so our crew, we had to get tools for them. When we just began, our production manager was a guy named Christopher. I don't know what his last name. And Christopher had worked as the English production manager on a show called King's Cross, I think, which was a medieval show with an American unit, and he was the English production manager. And so we hired him because he had experience working with Americans, but he had the bad habit of never wanting to upset us. So he would tell us stuff that wasn't true just because he didn't want to upset us. He very quickly had no idea where we were financially. We were, but when we were just starting up, we were talking about, okay, for the craft services table, he said, look, for the morning when the lads come in, we'll give them, they'll have a choice between coffee and tea, of course, but where the biscuits are concerned, he said, we should just give them a biscuit, but the problem is if you put the tin on the table, they'll take more than one. So his suggestion was to give them a biscuit and not put the tin on the table and that was odd to us. I remember my first year on Tales from the Crypt. We had to go visit Bob Zemeckis on as the set of the movie. He was shooting. Oh God, was it Love to Death? The one with Meryl Streep and Cher and Bruce Willis. Going up on the title.
Are you talking about Death Becomes Her?
Death Becomes Her. Thank you. Yes, he was shooting Death Becomes Her. So we went onto the set of Death Becomes Her for a little while just to hang out with Bob and talk about things. And I remember walking over to Bob's craft services table. You could feed a small country with the what coming off that table. I mean, there were gourmet meals on that craft services table. Our craft services table was much humbler by comparison. Joe Silver used to refer to our craft services table as gum and water. So when you compare our gum and water table to what they wanted to have on our English set, it was like, what?
So now it's just gum.
Truly, just water or gum. There's your choice. You can't have both.
I'm sorry, we're not going to put the 10 there because they may take more than one. So what, we're going to just hand everybody out their food?
We shooting in England, there were many remarkable experiences that we had never had that happen to us in Los Angeles. We shot in some amazing locations. Like I said, you want a castle? There's a castle. We shot I'm going up on his name. He got an Oscar for
Bob
LA
Hoskins?
Confidential.
No. Not Russell. No, Guy Pearce didn't win.
Yeah, I'm going up on his name.
On LA Convention.
I'm sorry. I'm going up on the name. We shot his episode at this place called Dorney Court. And Dorney Court is a property, it's a mansion that has existed since about sometime in the 1300s, about 1350. The man who owns that is related to the man who built it. That's a long time for a house to be in a family.
Yeah.
An amazing property. And at one point during the shoot, the owner, Mr. Palmer, came in and he said, I want to show you a room. I want to show you this thing. And he took us and he showed us a room that no one gets to see. It's an interior room. And you walk into it, and the room itself was 15 degrees colder than every room leading into it. And no explanation. And you walked in the room, and in addition to being it cold, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in ghosts. That room is seriously, there's some serious, something wrong with that. Was okay. There's something with this, something in this room is not right.
Yeah.
I experienced that room in Dorney Court. I couldn't tell you what was going on there, but that was kind of intense. It's funny. One day on that same shoot, food in England now is much better than it was when we shot Tales from the Crypt there. It has evolved considerably. It is much more a food location than it was. We would feed when we were on location, we would feed, there was a double-decker bus that we used, and there'd be the catering truck, and everyone would go eat on this double-decker bus. And the food on the first day of the shoot at Dorney Court was, I forget what it was. It was loathsome. And it was so bad that literally members of the crew began puking in the bus. And we had to then send everyone off the bus because several people had puked and the whole bus smelled of vomit.
That sounds like a horrible shoot too.
Most days were terrific. It was, working locations. God, I remember the first episode shooting. It wasn't the first episode that was the first episode we shot. It was the first episode we shot. Yeah. We shot at Dover Castle. And that was incredibly cool because down in Dover Castle in the tunnels is where a lot of the planning for the Second World War happened.
Oh, that's cool.
It's a historic location. It's incredibly historical, and you're shooting your dumb little TV show there.
That's the thing. America doesn't have. We don't have like historical locations like that where it's used. We have some, but like we've remodeled it.
Not quite like that.
No. We don't have like the place where they planned World War II.
That was great. Yeah, being in England was fun because we're in England. My wife is English, so she enjoyed that.
Okay.
And we had great digs. God, we had a great apartment in Knightsbridge, 2 blocks from Harrow.
Oh wow.
It is a lot of fun traveling on other people's money and getting a per diem, and working on a film set. You get there's food all day, there's always food. And hey, if we're working late, we sent out for food all the time. So I was getting a per diem. I was banking most of that per diem.
Yeah.
And occasionally, we'd go do our grocery shopping at Harrods. Grocery shopping at Harrods with cash. It was. Then it's funny at the end, when the shoot was done, Helen and I, my wife, we wanted to take a couple days in Paris because that's where we met.
Oh wow.
And we decided to stay at one of the best hotels in Paris because it was free money. So we stayed at the Hotel de Crillon. It's like $1,500 a night.
Wow.
$1,500 a night, just cash. That's how crazy, but it's so much when you're in that world.
Yeah.
There's nothing to compare it to. You are a constant kid in a candy store. And so you suddenly get cast out of that world.
Yeah.
Oh, it's heartbreaking. You've lost something. You've lost a really unique set of privileges that very few other people get to experience. It's sucks getting cast off the mountain.
I watched the episode that you wrote, the Bob Hoskins one that he directed as well. Do you have any thoughts on that one? I think it's the last one.
But by that point, I don't. Yeah, I wrote it. I think Coleman Decay did most of the work on that. I think he's credited or co-credited with it.
Okay.
I was so done with that show, man. Okay. I was already on to the next project. I was working on the sci-fi project, which I shouldn't have been because I was the day-to-day producer. Gil was back editing Bordello of Blood. And so for an awful lot of that 7th season, I was the day-to-day producer.
Wow.
In the end, we had to fire Christopher. The first person I ever fired was Christopher. Fired him, and I had to fire the accountant. I didn't care for that much, firing people. That is not in my skill set, but okay, did that. We hired a new production manager named Dominic Fulford, who brought the ship under control. We had no idea. Our whole model, like I said, was 3 out, 2 in. It got thrown on its head because, it just building sets was just so expensive. Our model just didn't work in London. It was counterproductive. It was expensive, and so we began to do more location work, which was fine. But locations. Lots of locations there, but getting around London is hard. It's not an easy city to travel around. There are freeways, but they're not all over the place. The streets are narrow and you're moving trucks, a lot of trucks. Where to park these things? It's a very, very hard city to shoot in unless you have lots of time and money. And that's neither of which we had.
Did you enjoy working with the British actors? Was there anything interesting about
that? We got a chance to work with, HBO would occasionally fly in a big actor who didn't live in Los Angeles. Occasionally we get some breakage to do that. But there were some actors who, we got to work with an actor that HBO would never have flown over at the time, who we loved. God, I'm not going up on names. That sucks. Train Spotting.
Oh, Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, Ewan
McGregor. Sorry.
Yeah, Ewan had done Train Spotting. He had done the other Danny Boyle movie, Unmarked Grave. Was that because?
Shallow Grave.
Shallow Grave. Thank you. Yeah, he'd done Shallow Grave, and so we were huge fans.
Yeah, those are.
And we were the fact that we could, holy cow, get that guy come and work for us. Going back and forth in the in the business class on Virgin Atlantic, we listened to and watched an awful lot of a guy named Steve Coogan doing a character named Alan Partridge. And this was just when it was fresh, young. And we fell in love with Alan Partridge. We had to get Steve Coogan. Well, HBO would never have brought Steve Coogan over, but because we were in London, we could hire Steve Coogan. So yeah, we had access to a bunch of talent that we wouldn't have access to before. We got close.
I heard that Daniel Day-Lewis was.
We got very close on Daniel Day-Lewis.
That would have been so amazing. That's
we almost got Alec Guinness. That was the one I really wanted. I wanted Alec Guinness. That would have been so one of my favorite actors.
Watch him in Lawrence of Arabia. He is so good in that role. You don't even realize that he's English. He's so good in it.
It's very un-PC the fact that he's playing the character that he's playing, but he disappears so into characters. He's so wonderful. There was the chance to work with all kinds of talent. We came within inches. We couldn't quite get it over the finish line to get Mark Knopfler to do a score.
Oh wow!
Because music was very, very important to us. We really made a point of getting the best possible composers to do our scores, feature composers, and we wanted Mark Knopfler. Just couldn't quite get that over the finish line.
Wow!
So close, close.
Is there anybody else that you wish you could have worked with or couldn't work with? Is anything? Kind of already answered that, but overall,
yeah, most everyone that we
let me ask this. Being a Daniel Day-Lewis fan, what was he going to play?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. One thing I can tell you, it wouldn't have been very good.
You don't think it would have been good?
He would have been good. The scripts, if it had been a Nimmerfro script, if Scott Nimmerfro, who was then on board as the first year we ever had staff, was the last season in London. I actually got to have another writer on the staff, and that was Nimmerfro. So, and Nimmerfro wrote probably more episodes than anybody. Scott went on to have a great career in TV, Pushing Daisies. Lots of terrific shows that Scott did. He unfortunately died of cancer a bunch of years ago. Really unfortunate. An incredibly talented, lovely guy. Scott's episodes are terrific. He did one. He enjoyed bowling, and there's not a lot of bowling in London, but he found a bowling alley, and so he did. He did an episode that has to do with bowling in London with Eddie Izzard. It's a very good episode. But Scott, even when the rest of the script sucked, Scott still delivered the goods. Wow. He wrote some of the best episodes ever. Scott
it's funny because when you take it to England, it almost starts feeling like masterpiece theater a little bit. when you're doing it, like it just, I think it's that those cameras have a different look than the American cameras.
The first episode we did there was directed by Freddie Francis, who directed the Hammer Tales from the Crypt. And so that was nice that we could do that. There was a bit of, I don't know, finishing the circle by having Freddie Francis do an episode.
Wow.
It was cool. There was, he was tapped into the lovies, the actors he got for his cast, that very old school of English actors who, for a generation, appeared in everything.
Yeah,
it was fascinating to get the touch of that world with our little world.
Well, this has been great. Is there anything else you're working on that you'd like to talk about?
Podcasts, and more podcasts. Kostard and Touchstone has 5 podcasts out in the world right now, as I mentioned. Another dozen in various stages of production. Drop as of September. We'll drop a new one in September called What Makes Us Laugh, which is about what makes us laugh personally, what makes us laugh culturally. There's a podcast coming up. Hopefully it'll be ready in October called I'm doing it with a journalist called Tom Lowenstein. I Need to Tell You is what it's called, and it's the whole John Hall story. Remember I told you John Hall from the Donna Hall story about this master criminal who put 25 people behind bars in Pennsylvania. It's the whole John Hull story, start to finish, which I'm doing with Tom Lowenstein, a journalist. An amazing, amazing story. Amazing. So, there are all these stories out there that my little company, our mission is to make the world a better place through storytelling.
That's a good
That's
mission to have. All right, now this is my little inside the actor's studio kind of questions I ask. These are very short. Do you have a beginning of the day routine? Do you have a beginning of the day routine?
Oh, I do. I schedule my day. The first thing I do is I sit down after I turn on the computer and by hand on a pad of paper. I sketch, the start of the day to the end of the day. It's hard to see because of the stupid camera, but all right.
Yeah, I can kind of see it.
Yeah. It's literally, I sketch out everything I'm going to do. If I've got podcast interviews I'm going to do, I've got literally 5 different projects in various stages of production right now. And it's probably sound editing. If I'm not doing anything else, I'm sound editing or I'm scripting the scripts. I'm also working on I'm finishing a book. I wrote a book called it's called How to Live Bullshit Free, a Practical Guide to Not Killing Yourself.
Oh, I love it. I want to read it, and I gotta have you on.
It's about what happened to me in 2016 and my realization that I thought I could kill myself and I would disappear from my family, my community with minimal harm, and that the reason that I was wanting to kill myself was because I hated myself because of what an adult did to me when I was 14. That was, and in the aftermath of the experience, as I began to take stock, I realized that I had come within literal inches of almost myself to death. And I thought that was hilarious. And as I looked around and the fact, okay, wow, that was a serious piece of almost killing you. I suddenly saw all the other ways that, various other kinds of bullshit had infected my life. Some of it is meaningless. If you lie up under 5 minutes, you won't be late. Yes, you will. Yeah, you can live with that kind of bullshit. But the other stuff, the bullshit in my relationships, the bullshit in the way that I was approaching my life, I was approaching my relationships with everything. Once I suddenly, and you got to deal with your own bullshit. Before you deal with anyone else's bullshit, deal with yours. Yep. And you'll find if you deal with your bullshit, it's so time consuming.
The only person you
deal with anyone else's bullshit.
The only person you can change is yourself.
It was a revelation. I suddenly found peace with the rest of the world I had never had. I found peace with myself I had never had. So I am living the last chapter, and it's really the creation of my company and podcasting, where transitioning from being a writer to being a storyteller, and then finding this purpose to tell stories. That my purpose is to tell every story I possibly can, and podcasting became the vehicle. Holy cow! I've got a purpose and I've got a method. And so I live every single day with pure purpose. Every single day. I walk around in a perpetual state of bliss. The mood stabilizer, that just keeps the darkness in a box. It's not a happy pill. I have a great therapist, but that's perspective on everything. That's someone checking my work all the time. Okay, I consume copious amounts of THC. I smoke a lot of dope every day. I've now gone, probably this is longer I've gone between puffs than I've gone in quite a while. But I smoke copious amounts of THC, but that really just slows me down. It doesn't. I walk around with purpose and at peace with myself and at peace with the world. And so, I walk around in a state of bliss. Was that the answer to the question?
No, that's perfect. Do you have a nighttime routine?
Yeah, it takes too long. My nighttime ritual takes forever. Yeah, there's the stuff you got to do before you go to bed, and one of the things I do before I go to bed, I clean my pipe. I've got a fantastic pipe that I highly. It's called it's called a Genius pipe, and it's metal, and it's entirely metal. It's like it's like a giant one hitter. You put stuff in there. It's entirely magnetic, so that the inside, see those little dots are all baffles, and so that's the filter. And so you put it here, take your hit. There's no,
Wow.
and it's all magnetic, so nothing can fall. The top goes on, so you can keep stuff in there. You can drop it, and you won't break it. And I've broken quite a few pipes. So, but you gotta take care of your stuff, because cannabis can make a bit of a mess. So you gotta clean it every day. And I clean it at night. That's the last thing I do, is I clean my dope, my genius pipe, and then I go to bed. That is very much a part of my nighttime ritual. It's until I've done that, I got miles. I got promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep.
Awesome. Do you meditate?
I'd say I do a lot of meditative things. The closest thing I get to meditation is I play tennis several times a week.
That's great.
And tennis, the head that I get into now when I play tennis, going through the thing that I went through, I played tennis my whole life, and up until the past 7 years, when I finally stopped hating myself. I hated tennis because I was mediocre at it. And so rather than coach myself, I beat the shit out of myself. Yeah. Well, that's no way to get better. And it wasn't until I stopped beating myself up and I began coaching myself instead. And suddenly, not only did I begin to play better, I began to enjoy it. Yeah. And it is now, I love playing tennis. I learned things about my life and work from tennis, and my life and my work informs my tennis game. It is all, yes, the people I play with.
Perspective.
Most of the time, there's a woman who I play with a lot, who I've played with for almost 20 years. And when we play together, we never play games. We just hit. And that's all I want. I'm not interested. I'm not playing her. I'm playing me. Yeah. And my goal is to be the best me I possibly can. If we keep score, I find myself always playing the score, and I'm going to play defensive. If we don't keep score, every single point can become an incredible rally.
That's great about yourself. You can just go with the flow. So yeah, I would say that's meditative.
And as a result, the tennis has improved, and it's what we both agreed we're looking for. Is we refer to it as Zenith, the Zen of tennis, that place where I'm not even thinking about it anymore. Suddenly the tennis animal inside me has taken over completely, and it's doing what it does.
That's where you want to be when you're acting, is in that Zen-like place of, I don't know what's going to happen next. It's hard to get there.
You're in the moment.
That's where you want to be.
Totally in the moment, and you are trusting yourself. It's you got the skills. Just do what you do.
Exactly.
Just be.
One thing I wanted to suggest to you, I do transcendental meditation. It's really helped me out. Since you're in LA, that's like right down the door. It's a million of those. Yeah. But I would suggest looking at that just to check it out, to see if it would add anything.
I think you're right. I think I would benefit and learn a lot from meditation. And I think
here's the thing that makes it different than all the other meditations. They give you a mantra. So you're focused on the mantra, and you're not focused on your hands or the other things. And it's helped me so much.
I believe consciousness is a higher power. We really don't know how it works. No. We don't know how you and I are having this conversation. We don't. Hey, where do memories go when we're not thinking them? We couldn't tell you. We have no idea. Our eyes can only see visible light. There are many other spectra of light that we can't see. X-rays, all kinds of other rays. Information, that's information blasting past us constantly that we're oblivious of. Information we can't process or collect in any way. Lots of sounds we can't hear, things we can't smell, lots of information that's always flying past us. Constantly, we're oblivious of it. We don't have the equipment. Yeah, our equipment can handle consciousness to a point.
Yeah.
But beyond that, some people have the ability to experience consciousness better than the rest of us. I suspect consciousness is a way to access information that our normal senses just can't.
Yeah.
But it takes training, it takes time, practice.
The problem is we live in
I
a
think
society.
meditation is a way to get there.
Yeah. We live in a society that's always teaching us to move forward, think forward instead of being in the now. So it's hard for us to stay in that Zen-like consciousness because everything is pushing us out of it.
A terrific point. Yeah. You're absolutely right. No, it is one of the things. It is on my bucket list.
Yeah. You should
It
try it.
absolutely is.
I've suggested this to so many people and I'm like, just once you try it, you'll know what I'm talking about. I can't explain it to you.
Not a doubt. There's not a doubt in my mind that you're absolutely right. I know that you are right. It's just a matter of
Because for me, it gave me a place to go when I, just, if I'm not feeling good, just go to that place, go to that mantra, go to that. It'll give what meditation. And I did other meditations, but this is the one that kind of like I thought was the best for me. I mean, but it's just that having a place to go. Like I wish when I was a kid, I knew about meditation because I would have been like, when I'm not feeling good, I can go here. And I think that's what we always need is that place to soothe the two. I mean, we don't have
now
it.
more than ever in this crazy world a world that feels out of control. Yeah, a place where you're not out of control, where you have at least a modicum of control. Yeah, sounds like a wonderful, warm, welcoming environment.
Yeah,
for sure.
What do you do for physical fitness? You kind of answered this with
tennis.
Tennis. Cool.
Tennis.
What are you reading? What are you reading?
I don't have reading. I don't do as much as I wish I could. I subscribe to the New Yorker. I subscribe to the Atlantic. I listen to as many pieces as I can. I read what I can. I've got a ton of books that I need to get to that.
I have to schedule it. That's how I make reading work for me.
The couple of books that are sitting that I've got to get to immediately are books that I'm in the process of turning into podcasts.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm doing one with a former CIA officer named John Kiriakou called Dead Drop. John was during the War on Terror. He was one of the first people we grabbed. We were trying to figure out who was responsible for 9/11. We thought there was a guy named Abu Zubaydah we thought was the number 2 at Al Qaeda. When we captured him in Pakistan in 2002 or 3, I forget which, John Kiriakou was his handler for the first 60 hours that we held this guy. In the end, it turned out this guy, Abu Zubaydah, was not the number 2 at Al Qaeda. He not a prince, but not the number 2 at Al Qaeda, but he gave us an incredible amount of very valuable intelligence data. John, like I said, was his handler. John found out after they moved him to a couple of black sites, they tortured that man. They waterboarded him 82 times, despite the fact that he told us everything and he'd given us great information. When John heard that, he ratted out our torture program and spent 2.5 years in federal lockup because he ratted out our torture program. John was the guy who ratted out the torture program. That's
what they wanted to do to Snowden. Why do you think Snowden fled the country? He knew what would happen.
So I'm doing this podcast with John called Dead Drop. One of the what John wanted to start the podcast with, this is about how to be a spy and how not to be a spy. And the first thing he wants to do is the story of a guy named William Bradley. He was the station chief in Beirut. He was kidnapped and murdered by terrorists. And he made every mistake. This is an experienced intelligence officer who made terrible mistakes, which is why he got captured and why he's dead. So for John, it's an important lesson in what not to do. So I gotta read the book, and I gotta know the whole story backwards and forwards so I can figure out how to tell this story. So a lot of my reading, unfortunately, is work related.
But that's good.
I don't get to.
No.
I stopped reading fiction years and years and years ago, not because I don't like fiction, but because it was too it was interfering with everything else that was happening in my head. To be thinking of these other characters when I need to be thinking of my characters, and I didn't want them infringing. So and the fiction I used to read all the time. I'm a big John le Carré fan. Everything he ever read. I'm a big John le Carré. I love that world.
I would say it would add to your characters. I don't know, but I'm just going by a feeling here. I don't think it would hurt your characters, because I think your characters are very strong, and I think it would just add to them. But that's just me.
I disagree.
What are you listening to?
My favorite group, every time they're in town, I'll go see them, is a group called Thievery Corporation.
Okay. Yeah, I think
it's world music, but there's a combination of all different musical styles. I have two kids. I'm 66, but I had kids older. So my son is 26 and my daughter is 23. Cool. And I'm very, what they listen to is a lot of what I hear whenever they're over. I'm very aware of what they listen to. My son is very much into urban hip hop. So a lot of that plays and he lives in the house with us. So a lot of that plays all the time. So our tastes are incredibly eclectic. When my daughter was a kid, what I wanted to put into her head and the music that I surrounded her with was strong, independent female voices. Janelle Monáe, the Veronicas, just all these strong, dynamic female voices, and that's really what she gravitates towards these days. So that worked good.
That's great. What are you watching right now?
Last thing we just saw. Oh God. Okay. Up. Well, Somebody Somewhere.
No. Well, so how can people reach you?
The best way is at kostardandtouchstone.com. That's https:// Kostard and Touchstone. COSTARDAND Touchstone TOUCHSTONE.com. Kostard and Touchstone.com. That's where you'll find links to all of the podcasts that we're doing and information about all the podcasts we have in development or in various stages of production on their way to being here. All
right. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate this. It's been great.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is what a fun. Terrific conversation we've had.
This is awesome. All right. Thank you. Thanks. Welcome. Thanks for being on the DMF. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.